I'm Jack Nichols and welcome to
He's going to break his world title.
For my Gosby! Oh, he's done it! And look at these two go! Ewan is going to do it! His first victory!
The World Championship is done.
What a race it's been!
Hello everybody and welcome to the Formula Sim Racing World Championship finale here from Suzuka. It's the Japanese Grand Prix and it's time to find out who is going to be the 2024 Formula Sim Racing World Champion. Back in 2022 when we last had a season finale, we'd been waiting 8 years for the moment. On the day, it was Colin Spork who was able to snatch the title away from Alex Siebel by just a few points. Well, today, it's going to be Yannick Bock in that role, trying to overhaul a 5-point deficit to the Brit Owen McGorgy, who currently holds the championship lead. A very good evening to everyone. Welcome along to what is going to be a historic night in Formula Sim Racing history. It's myself, Ewan and Cam Rodger to take you through it. Looking forward to this one again, Cam. Thankful we didn't have to wait quite so many years for this moment again. It's our second season finale in just 3 seasons.
Yeah, it's awesome when it comes down to this. Just the final time for the drivers to show what they've got on the track and to try and win the title. And what a season it has been between Bock and McGorgy, and it's come down to this 2-horse race. The previous race back at Kota was certainly very important with how we stand coming into this final race. It's very close between the two, but of course it's McGorgy who leads by just a handful of points.
There is the margin 8 overturned by McGorgy, so he actually came into that round at the American Grand Prix behind, came out ahead by 5 points. Today requiring just a top 2 to be champion. Jake Dennehan is confirmed in 3rd in the driver's standings. He can't fall any further, he can't gain any places, never mind what he does, although he will probably try and help McGorgy win the title as his race clutch teammate. They are the team champions, of course. Janis Braxot can finish 4th and will look to hold off the likes of Rd.10 Simicic, who he has 10 points over. He's got 19 points over Manuel Biancalilla and Dennis Jordan, although we're not entirely sure where Jordan is at the moment. And Mitchie Hoyer can theoretically get 4th as well. Then there's a bit of a bigger gap back to Jan Granqvist and Sander Callas rounding out the top 10. So that's where we stand in terms of the standings. And by the way, we haven't seen Jan Granqvist finish a race since the San Marino Grand Prix. That's where we've been, and that just shows you how long ago the San Marino Grand Prix has been. It's been a pretty short season in terms of time span here, Cam, but the races have been pretty relentless, mostly every fortnight since the start of March. We arrive here at Japan, though, at the start of August for what should be a fantastic finale. And the first time this has been the championship finale for quite some time in the real world of Formula One, although it has had some fairly iconic moments down the years as well. As we learnt last year, though, this could be a tricky championship finale location.
Yes, a tough circuit. It's excuse me, it's not the easiest place to go racing, especially when a championship is on the line. We did see an insane battle between Jake Dennehan and Janis Simicic last year at this track. Of course, not the finale that time around, but we come here. We don't go to Brazil this year, we go to Japan. And the reason why it's so difficult is because there's no real overtaking or good overtaking opportunity. The hardest braking zone down at the hairpin has a kink before it. The straights up towards Spoon has a kink in it. The straight up towards the final chicane has 130R before it. And then turn 1 isn't really a braking zone. So there isn't really a nice place that you can overtake. And therefore the battles are very difficult. And they certainly get a bit feisty out on the track.
Here's a bit of mirroring history for you, by the way, Cam. You know, the last time we didn't finish at Interlagos in the Formula Sim Racing World Championship was 10 years ago this year, a little bit later on in the year, at the end of October, the American Grand Prix. Of course, I'm sure you remember what happened that year. Bono House overturning an advantage that Morgan Moran held by a fairly large margin. Guess what position Morgan Moran needed to guarantee himself the title that day? Yep, second place. So history very much repeating itself 10 years on. We're not at Interlagos for the first time in the last decade, and the championship leader only needs a top 2. Will we see a similar race situation play out? Probably unlikely, considering the oddities of 2014, but we should be in for an interesting finale. Now, qualifying is, of course, underway, and of course, going to be so important. I mean, we saw how difficult it was to overtake at times during the Japanese Grand Prix 1 year ago. How much do you think these drivers will have been putting into practice in terms of qualifying versus race pace because of that track position that we've already talked about?
I think, especially as we had an extra week's practice for this race, I think there'll be just a lot of quali to make sure that you're up for scratch, because if you can't get yourself inside the top 5 here, it's going to be very difficult to win the race. It's tough place to overtake, but let's see how they do in qualifying. And one of the masters of the season is McGorgy. Can he put it on pole to try and lead the way through the first lap?
He was in the low 28s during practice. His teammate Jake Dennehan got into the high 27s, would you believe it, throughout that qualifying session, or that practice session, excuse me. This is a lot more pressure though. That session was half an hour with as many laps as you like. This is just 10 minutes and 3 attempts at this qualifying lap, and at the moment Jake Dennehan is on the fastest time. Manuel Biancalilla initially set that, but he's already quite a way round the lap, and he's going to set a benchmark for these two to try and hit. Yannick Bock is a little bit further round. He's not even completed the first sector as of yet. He's making his way towards that line at the moment, but making sure everybody else sets the benchmark before him. Here comes Ruben Mercedes. He will be the first over the line here, and he will set a benchmark of a 1 minute 28.7. That's not that bad realistically, but it will be eclipsed by Dennehan and McGorgy.
Yeah, it certainly will. And we're going to see a lot of times come in very fast around here. Biancalilla goes up towards the top. And now it's McGorgy's purple in that middle sector. Can he come across the line to put it on the front row as we go? And yes, it is. It's a 0.22, a tenth of a second to the good, with Burlack following him in behind. But then Jake Dennehan goes to the front.
Dennehan with a 28.1 setting the pace for now. There's Johnny Simitic on his first lap time. He's not very far around the lap either, but Yannick Bock is a bit further round. He's just coming up to the second sector line at the moment. In fact, to the very end of the lap, and here's Jan Kragvis, by the way. He's gone purple in the middle sector. That's a turn up for the books that I wasn't quite expecting from the Super Venturi driver. Here he goes out the final corner now with just over 6 minutes remaining. Grankvist goes first. What a time from Jan Grankvist. Yannick Bock goes up to 6th place. Respectable, but 2 tenths off his championship rival.
And this is big for Super Venturi. Of course, they've got Petter Burlack in there, who may or may not be part of Race Clutch, and is certainly going to be up there for the fight. So the 4 of them looking very fast indeed up towards the front. Of course, we've got Yo Tyen coming in halfway through the season. He's looking fast. Biancalilla, your former championship leader. But let's see what Simic can do.
The 4-time champion looking to get involved at the front of the field. 4th place, not a bad time at all from him. Pushes Bock down to 7th as Dennis Jordan gets onto the circuit. Didn't do any of the practice session. He jumped in right in time for qualifying. Does that suggest to you, Cam, he's maybe not very motivated and not well practiced ahead of this race?
We'll find out what time he's going to do on the track. His teammate Gillison is in 10th place, and that might be an omen to see. He's normally a little bit fast in Gillison, so maybe up inside the top 10 for Dennis Jordan, but look at the gap really towards the front. The top 6 or so are quite tight, and then the gaps open up very quickly in behind. Very easy to see the difference in the qualifying pace. But what can Jordan do in this final sector?
Yeah, Bock's got to make sure he's part of that front group, hasn't he, as Jordan tries to do the same. He has a bit of a wiggle on the way into the Casio Triangle, and I'm afraid that's not a very good line through there. He is going to be outside the top 10 as a guess. It will be, oh no, 9th, just sneaks in. 9th place for him, as Michi Hoyer also makes his way over the line for the end of his first lap and goes 8th. So good lap time from him as well, not too far away from Yannick Bock. The second round of times are just about underway. There goes Owen McGorgy, who spend a bit more time on board with the current championship leader. He'd be so pleased that he could turn that advantage around by taking his 6th podium in a row here in the World Championship. 3 seconds, 3 thirds, and 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 firsts within those 6 podiums in a row. It's been a remarkable run. And the thing that I've really noticed about this World Championship, Cam, is the difference from this into previous years. the fact that it's two championship rivals that are almost complete rookies in the World Championship. We've never had two championship rivals like this for some time with so little experience in this championship.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, it's not like they are inexperienced in sim racing, I guess, but as you say, the fact that they've come into the World Championship and just gone straight to the front. Bok had last season to warm up, but then he wasn't really in a competitive team. So it's a very interesting situation. And of course, McGorgy, he's just been getting quicker and quicker over the last 2 years, and then jumped straight into a championship winning team. So that was always good to get you towards the front. Bianculilla improving on his lap, goes up to 3rd place. That could be crucial for him.
Now, another one of those drivers I think that would be ruining the where it all went wrong at Silverstone, I'm afraid. That went on with 3 races or 4 races, only scoring a few points in 4 races for Bianculilla. Really stunted his championship charge. Here is Owen McGorgy, improving personally, not going fastest overall though. Here he goes, 3rd, just behind his teammate, who's not on a lap for the moment, but Peter Perlak is, and it's a bit of a struggle, especially in the first sector. He doesn't improve, doesn't go anywhere. These improvements are coming or getting hard to come by.
Yeah, they certainly are. We got Grankvist just coming to start his next lap. We see Gillison come round the final corner, wiggling his way down the hill. Across the lines, he's going to make an improvement up inside the top 10. No, just P11, falling a little bit short. Bok is on a lap, not improving in that first sector though. It's still it's a half decent first sector, but it's about 3/10 down on what Bianculilla did. And
look at the improvement required to even get 7th here. A 1/10 of a second up to Peter Perlak, almost exactly, but only another half-tenth after that, and he'll be in 5th place. So, Yannick Bok has got a good chance here, but not with that, I'm afraid. A big spin out the chicane. I get the feeling, Cam, he's not enjoying this circuit very much.
Yeah, and he's got to be quick to get round to do a final lap as well. Pretty close on time, considering that these drivers like to do a bit of a slower outlap. So he's very, very close. It looks like he has got out the pit lane, so he will have enough time. But he's only got about 10-15 seconds margin to get to that start-finish line. But Grankvist now purple in the middle sector. Nice lines through Spoon here, going out wide. And then now just keeping yourself flat to the floor through 130R and judging your braking zone to absolute perfection is what you need to do. He's a little bit slower in the middle sector though.
Jan Grankvist is on fire today. This is quite phenomenal. Just over a minute left in the session. This will be his last time. And this is not going to be a good exit out the final chicane either. It might not be an improvement for Grankvist despite the purple first sector. He goes over the line and it isn't. He's so close to his own time, but he's not close enough, I'm afraid. And that will be the end of his session. So, Jan Grankvist sets the benchmark. He says to everyone else, what can you do? Jake Dennehan will be one of those first to respond. Through he goes, turn 1 and 2.
And look how fast this first sector is in this car. 5th, 6th gear. This left hand is awesome, almost flat out as well for coming into the interesting section through Dunlop. Up the hill, trying to keep it flat out, getting on the push pass as early as you can. And then you have to be brave here. Have to commit to the first right-hander of Degner 1, but keep it in line because you've got to slow it down for Degner 2. Under the bridge, use a bit of the exit where you can before working your way up to the chicane, up to the hairpin I should say, and it's purple in that first sector.
Very good indeed from Jake Dennehan. We saw him in the 27s in practice. If he can pull one out like that in qualifying here, it would be spectacular and it would help his teammate. That, of course, will be his main aim here today. Help Owen McGorgy win the driver's title to go along with the Race Clutch team's title that they've already secured. Yannick Bok will not improve further. The checkered flag next to his name. 8th place is the best he's going to get for the current 2nd place man in the championship. Here goes Jake Dennehan towards the 2nd sector line. He's on fire. Here he goes in through 130R. First 2 sectors purple. He's setting this track alight with his speed at the moment. Out the final corner he goes. This is surely going to be pole for Jake Dennehan, just as he did at the very start of the season. He's going to do it again. 1:27.7. That's an unbelievable lap time. That will not be beaten.
It certainly won't. And Alex Maggio was right in Discord with the lap time, with the call from Ewan O'Leary. And across the line, can Simičić do anything to challenge up towards the front? No, he's going to stay there. McGorgy into the final sector. He's slightly improving. Still a solid first sector. Is it going to be enough out of the final chicane?
He probably wants to lock out the front row with his teammate, but I'm not entirely sure it's enough. Here we go over the line. It's not quite enough. 42 thousandths away. but very, very close indeed. Here comes Petr Birlak out over the line, as well as Young Tyen, who's not too far behind him at the moment. Mitty Hoyer will be a concern for Bock, although he doesn't quite improve. There goes Tyen towards the line. Not sure he's improving quite enough either. No is the answer to that one, and Isaac Hillison certainly isn't, as he doesn't improve on any of the first two sectors. But what a performance from Jake Dennehan. That is a lap time that not many of us were expecting.
Absolutely not. Miles ahead, 0.3 of a second in the World Championship. Look where the next 0.3 of a second gets you, to about 7th, 8th position. That is absolutely amazing from Jake Dennehan.
Certainly is. He takes it by 0.3 ahead of Jan Kvankvist, Owen McGorgy and Manuel Biancalillo on the second row, ahead of four-time world champion Jurnej Simičić. Young Tyen, who pushed him all the way a couple of weeks ago, will be 6th. Then it will be Petr Birlak and Yannick Bock starting down in 8th. Mitja Hoyer 9th, followed by Jonas Brackstock, rounding out the top 10. Well, what a qualifying session that was, and what a performance from Jake Dennehan. We're getting ready for the Japanese Grand Prix, the final race of the Formula Sim Racing World Championship for 2024. But first, before we get there, let's have a look at how we got to this situation. The lights are on and we're ready to go. Blast off on a new season. The Bahrain Grand Prix is underway. Owen McGorgy's looking for 4th position maybe. On his left-hand side, he's got Jurnej Simičić and Yannick Bock as they dive into turn 4 for position number 4. They're still 3 wide. Jurnej Simičić comes out on top. It's Jake Dennehan who wins the Bahrain Grand Prix. We are underway again. Owen McGorgy looking to cover off Yannick Bock. Side by side for leading through. Yannick Bock goes through into turn 9.
Who's going to get the run on pit exit? Looks like it's going to be Yannick Bock.
Here comes Owen McGorgy on the outside line into turn 9 and he's through. It's Owen McGorgy who's going to win the Australian Grand Prix.
I see McGorgy trying to get the run.
Oh, that's close. And he needs to make this progress. This is important for his race. Oh, my goodness me. Yannick Bock was so late on the brakes there. It's going to be late on the brakes for Biancalillo, who shoves Bock wide. Jurnej Simičić comes round to win the German Grand Prix. Manuel Biancalillo and Yannick Bock join him on the podium. Race Clutch may have to admit they got it wrong today. We're underway at the Marina Bay Street Circuit, and it's a great start from Jurnej Simičić. Yannick Bock is into the lead of this race. He's going for it at the Singapore Sling round the outside. That is special. Owen McGorgy's through into 2nd position. Yannick Bock is going to hang on. He wins the Singapore Grand Prix. McGorgy looking to get off to a good start and block off his rival Yannick Bock on the way towards turn number 1. Oh, Simičić is gone. Simičić is gone. Smoke coming out of the back of the car for the 4-time champion. Yannick Bock will head through into the race lead, and he's going to go back-to-back in victories in the World Championship. Yannick Bock wins the British Grand Prix. Owen McGorgy flies now through, and he takes the lead of the San Marino Grand Prix. Owen McGorgy, he takes his 2nd win of the season. It's going to be Yannick Bock in 5th place, is it? Just ahead of Martin Merkley. There goes Yannick Bock too, up to 5th position. He's jammed on the outside. Jordan closes the door. Goodness me, Owen McGorgy muscles his way through. He threw everything at that race, but the Turkish Grand Prix is won by Yannick Bock.
It's a great start there by Owen McGorgy.
The race cars really putting their foot down, working together well.
But I think Dennis Jordan might have burnt his battery. Bock does get through. McGorgy wins the Belgian Grand Prix, followed by Jake Dennehan. Yannick Bock in 3rd place.
And down the inside goes the championship leader, Yannick Bock, with 3 wide into turn 1. As down the inside of absolutely everybody goes Owen McGorgy. He's going to move to the inside. Oh my goodness me, that was unbelievable. Side by side into 13. There's contact. Bock goes around. The championship rivals collide. Jurnej Simičić wins the US Grand Prix. And there's Owen McGorgy, the new championship leader. Yannick Bock finishes in 6th place. What a season it's been. Credits and, of course, a big thanks to Ed Hunter for making the video and showcasing what a great season we have had in 2024. With maybe the exception of San Marino, Cam, every single race this season has been extraordinary.
Yes, it's been quite something. I can't understand as well how, with close the championship has been, we've always ended up with McGorgy, with Bock, and then Jake Dennehan as well, most races, being at the top. So even though it's so tight, they have that half a tenth extra when they need it to make sure they're at the front. It's quite incredible. Of course, we can't forget the likes of SimRacing. He's won races. We've got Grankvist and Bianca Lilla, who, especially in the first part of the season, they were up there as well. But over the season, they've just all fallen short, and we've been left with 2 drivers remaining in this championship. It's going to be, it's going to be good fun. And just a reminder that it's just 5 points the difference between the two, and if Yannick Bock wins, second place is only 4 points, so it won't be enough for him to win the championship. So Magorgi, in that case, would need to be third.
Yep. If Bock were to win the title, if you want to look at it this way, Magorgi needs a top 2, and in that case, Bock can't do a thing about where he finishes. Jake Dennehan will have the job, I would imagine, of helping Owen Magorgi to the title, because he can't move up or down in a slightly bizarre situation. He's guaranteed third, even while the title is still alive. The team's championship is also wrapped up. It has been for some time. 143 points is their margin. And you may have noticed in qualifying, Yannick Bock is here on his own with no teammate. So they could lose second in the team's championship as well to rFactor eSports team, who do have Simoncic and Hoyer both here, raring to go and look pretty good as well based on qualifying. So, I mean, you can see them both in the standings there. They are going to be a force to be reckoned with throughout the race as well. But looks like we're about ready to go for the formation lap, the final formation lap of the season. 53 laps ahead of us. Just over 300 kilometres of the season still remain, and Jake Dennehan will be on the pole position. I can't for those of you who haven't done any driving around here in terms of practicing, whether you're not an academy or pro driver, might not be an rFactor 2 driver. It's hard to put into words, Cam, what an extraordinary lap time that was from Jake Dennehan. I mean, just looking at the margin itself is impressive, 3 tenths, but a 27.7 is truly unbelievable.
Yeah, looking at in practice, doing a mid to low 28 was a good lap. So to do a 0.1, 0.2, you're probably going to be on pole position. So to get into the 27s, and a 27.7 for that as well, not a 9.99. Yeah, certainly a perfect lap. But let's see how the grid is going to line up for the final race of the season.
Yep, confirmed third place man in the championship. Jake Dennehan will be on the front ahead of Jan Kvangvist, who is alongside him. What a fantastic qualifying from him, looking to return to a good result. Owen Magorgi looking to take the title from third, with Manuel Biancalula alongside him. Bounce back to fourth at the American Grand Prix last round. Yannick Simoncic, the 4-time world champion, is fifth ahead of Rd.10, who hounded him in America. Then it was Petr Perlak and Yannick Bock rounding out the top 8. Bock needing to rise from there. Mitchie Hoyer and Jonas Braxop round out the top 10 with an all Scuderia Ferrari eSports row 6. Isaac Killerson out-qualifies Dennis Jordan. Thomas Vack and Ruben Mercedes round out an all-Optimano row 7 with Giordano Valeriano and Cosmo Prosciutto, 15th and 16th position for the former pro champion. Sander Callis is 17th ahead of Stoyan Barbakov, who's directly behind his teammate. And then it's Danny Van Der Neat in 19th place ahead of George Zalagianis in the final of the ground effect cars in 20th. That is how we line up. A couple of drivers missing, of course. We've only got one Evo car, as I've already mentioned. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Camo, we've only got one Netrex 2, which is meaning that we've got... oh no, sorry, your time's here. He's way up the front, isn't he? Sorry, I apologise for that. But we've only got one of Giordano Valeriano and his mates. So there we go. That's... oh no, Biancalula's up there. I should stop trying to guess. Anyway, 53...
It's Braxop's teammate. Martin Merkley's not here.
Thank you. Really sending myself out at sea there. Anyway, 53 laps ahead of us. Jake Dennehan's leading the race, and he will aim to in towards turn 1. What does this man do to try and get up the field? He's got a wall ahead of him, a mountain to climb, some would say. 5 places between himself and Magorgi, first of all, and the lack of help of a teammate that Magorgi is going to have. How on earth does he tackle this challenge?
Just remember that Bock has won most of his races on strategy. Singapore was strategy, Silverstone was strategy, Turkey was strategy as well. How he got back in the race in, I think it was Spa as well from memory, was on strategy. He's going to have to do something to gain positions today as well from that 8th position. The issue is, I think it's going to be a fairly comfortable 2-stop for a lot of people. So I don't know if there's going to be much that you can do to do anything drastic, but let's see what they can do. At the end of the day, being better on tyres is still going to improve your position at the end of the race.
I can't imagine what the heart rate's like down on the grid for those championship contenders, because mine's quite high. It's going to be a tense evening for those fighting for a world championship. We're going to have our third different winner in 3 years in Formula Sim Racing World Championship competition. But is it going to be Ewan McGorgy or Yannick Bock taking their first title? There's McGorgy, his view of the lights from third position, directly behind his teammate, who will surely try and assist him throughout the day. And there's the look back at the grid. And you really do have to strain to find Yannick Bock looking to overtake McGorgy and take this title. The Japanese Grand Prix, the final round of the Formula Sim Racing World Championship in 2024 is ready to get going. 53 laps, 300 kilometres of racing, and we're almost ready to go. Jake Dennehan eagerly awaiting the lights. Everybody eagerly awaiting the lights. Seem to be taking an awful long to come on. This is not going to help the tension, is it? Goodness me.
On the days where it matters, it's the drivers that stay calm in these situations that will often come out on top as well.
20 of them set out on the formation lap. 19 of them have remained for some reason. Do you really have a long hold up here?
Someone must be slightly out of position on the grid, and it is easy to do because we're downhill on the grid here, so it's easy to roll. And it looks like I think we are going to be getting a restart, because to have a race, the lights need to go out.
Yeah.
And just what pressure this adds to the drivers at the final race of the season as well.
I know. It's an abnormal situation. We haven't seen it at all this season in terms of having to restart a race from memory anyway. I don't think we've had to restart, so although I might be misremembering, as you well know. It's going to be very, very nerve-wracking now for everybody. Are they going to go through the warm-up session again? Very possibly. As I mentioned before, 19 of them remain in the session. Someone is missing now. It's not from the front runners.
I was about to say I think it's Dennis Jordan, because sometimes he likes to do that.
No, he's there.
To reset the force feedback if there's a restart. But, well, hopefully all the drivers are able to take it to the start of the grid. That would always be a good thing. It's never a nice situation as well where you have this restart, because you get your head in the game. You're literally on the grid. You are 100% prepared. You've done 2-3 weeks of practice. You've done the qualifying. And now, also, this is an interesting one. I know everyone basically was on the mediums as well, but you've sort of seen everyone. You've seen what tyres they're going to be on, trying to work out what they're doing. It is tough to get your head back in the game and try to refocus again.
Well, I mentioned I can't really. It was Zargianis, by the way, on the grid who disconnected over the course of that. So he might not be returning, unfortunately. Oh, he's back. He's just popped up at the bottom of the grid. So hopefully he will be able to take the start, and hopefully there will be a start to this race. But as you say, a really, really nerve-wracking situation. I mentioned my heart rate's quite high, and I'm not even racing. Goodness knows what this does to the minds of those fighting for a title. There's one of them, Ewan McGorgy. Interesting that he's gone back out again, not wanting to get away from the rig and just think about something else for a moment, have a walk around for a moment. He's not one of those to go and pace around. Neither is Yannick Bock, clearly. He wants to get back out onto the circuit, even if it was only brief, before Yannick Bock returned back to the pit lane. Jake Dennehan's out there as well. In fact, about 2/3 of the field deciding that a warm-up lap again is a good idea before the formation lap, which will be done again.
I probably would do the same as well. I don't know if I could just sit there for a couple of minutes. Of course, just redo the warm-up. We're waiting for George to come back in, make sure the grid is all set properly, and then obviously go again. It's always sometimes better to wait an extra 30 seconds or a minute rather than rushing into a restart and then having some further issues. But yeah, it looks like most drivers coming in now with a minute to go, and there we go. There's the session changing, and we go back out onto the grid for the final time this season. And hopefully we can get the start this time. I did mention it's quite interesting here because it is downhill. And there's been multiple times where drivers have got jump starts, not because they necessarily accelerated too early, but because they lifted off the brake and then the car just rolled forward. So that is something that needs to be taken into consideration for the drivers today, because getting a jump start, especially for anyone really, but especially those top two in the championship, that would be game over pretty much straight away.
Yeah, and what that also does, this restart here, I'd say restart, we never really started, but you get the point. It allowed everybody a little bit of a look into what they intended to do on the start with tyre compounds, etc. And that now, surprise element, has gone a little bit. First of all, do you think anybody will have changed their tyre compounds based on what they might have seen going on around them? And second of all, will they even take any notice?
Let's look as they go on the grid. I mean, it was pretty much all mediums anyway. Brackshock hards, P10, of course, it resets once you go back onto the formation lap. So there were a couple of hard-tired runners around there. To be fair, Jake Dennehan gets them away once more. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're all the mediums. It's just the best strategy. You can still go long enough into the Grand Prix, but you're not too slow at the beginning. And of course, the softs with a full tank of fuel is going to be about near enough 130 litres of fuel for these drivers. So quite a lot of weight to put on those soft tyres.
Yeah, well, really shred through them very quickly, although a pair towards the end might go down pretty nicely. We look right through the field. Jake Dennehan is executing another fairly slow formation lap towards the grid again, and followed by Jan Krankvist. And McGorgy, importantly, in that third position, just ahead, 5 positions ahead indeed, of Yannick Bock, who's trying to chase him down. To give you a reminder of the permutations, if Owen McGorgy finishes in the top 2 of the race here today, he will be the driver's champion no matter what Yannick Bock does. If he finishes outside, then there's a chance for Yannick Bock, and at the moment he's qualified outside the top 2. There's every chance he'll race his way outside the top 2 as well. It really does lie with Bock to seize this opportunity, because as you were saying to me before we came to air, in a sense there is not a lot he can do here, but if he executes his part of the deal, I don't think he'll be too displeased with his evening. And at the moment, that part of the deal, winning from 8th, very difficult indeed to achieve.
And I think the biggest factor, and it's kind of been all season as well, is Bock is kind of on his own up the front there. McGorgy has his direct teammate of Dennehan. Of course, they've had a lot of success together. They've had a lot of races where they're side by side. Bock's teammate Philip Pushki hasn't quite been on the pace this season. He's not even here today. Of course, everyone knows, Dennis Jordan is basically Evo team owner, but he also hasn't had the season that he would have wanted, and he's only been there in a couple of races. So Bock's been doing a lot of these battles on his own compared to the 2 of Race Clutch. So it's a tough one, and especially when Race Clutch are 1-3 in qualifying, it's going to be hard. And you know that Jake is effectively going to let Owen through if he needs that position, isn't he? Because why would he not? So Bock has got to race against that as well. It's going to be a tough one, but he is the man to do it, I would say. But McGorgy, I mean, he's looking strong for this as we stand.
He certainly is. Between them, Owen McGorgy and Yannick Bock ahead of this season only had 1 World Championship podium. Now they're fighting for Formula Sim Racing's biggest prize. It's the World Championship finale at the Japanese Grand Prix. The first time in a decade it's been held outside of Brazil, here at the Suzuka International Circuit. The final driver, Rodger Giannis, puts himself onto the grid ahead of 53 laps. One final race to decide the title in 2024. There's Owen McGorgy's look at the lights as we get ready for this race. The lights come on for the Japanese Grand Prix for one final time in 2024. We go racing, and it's Jake Dennehan looking to execute pole position and take the lead immediately. But here comes his teammate Owen McGorgy, immediately takes the lead. The championship leader, the race leader now in the Japanese Grand Prix, into the S's for the first time.
And it was a decent start from Bock as well to keep himself clean through that very tricky turns number 1 and 2. And McGorgy with the absolute perfect start, getting to the front. This is going to be a tough one indeed, and he's absolutely going off into the distance as well by a second already. He's pushing. Dennehan is going to be, of course, his back marker there today, and they just need to work their way through. A nice strategy to get Owen the championship.
The mountain that Yannick Bock has to climb this evening just got a few metres taller as Owen McGorgy takes the lead of the Japanese Grand Prix. He leads Jake Danahan ahead of Jan Granqvist, Joni Simičić, Manuel Bianculula, Jo Tyne, Petter Perlak and Yannick Bock, the top 8, followed by Michi Hoy and Jonas Braxup. But look at that, 1.5 seconds. Jake Danahan is on hard tyres. He can't keep up with his teammate, or he doesn't want to keep up with his teammate. Probably both at the moment. Jan Granqvist struggling to keep up as well right now. This is where overtakes are required for Yannick Bock very quickly, and of course anybody else in the field who wants to race it to win this race.
Yeah, I think this is probably the game plan for Race Touch. Get 1-2, get a bit of a gap for Owen, and then let's see what happens in behind. But how slow does Jake want to go? Because look at the train in behind. He's going to be under a huge amount of pressure, and he's going to get very tense in behind if everyone's getting bunched up.
Don't forget, he knows how to defend round here. Who could forget his battle with Joni Simičić towards the end of the 2023 World Championship, where eventually Joni Simičić was crowned a 4-time Formula SimRacing World Champion in what was a very close season up until that point. This time round, though, he's not fighting for the title. Instead, he is fighting for a race win. Let's have a look at that launch on board with Owen McGorgy, because it was quite incredible. And there you have it, straight in the slipstream of Jake Danahan, who, once he saw him coming, probably thought, I'll lift off a little bit here, let my teammate go through.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to see this from Granqvist's point of view as well. Did he get a bad start? Not particularly, but we're just going to see there's McGorgy coming through the middle of the pair of them and able to take that. And of course, Granqvist slightly doing that, but not enough to try and get past up and towards turn 3.
Yeah, nowhere near. So, into the first couple of laps we go, and the end of the first 2 laps of the season finale in the Formula SimRacing World Championship for 2024. Look at that gap, 3.5 seconds for Owen McGorgy, who is romping away with this race at the moment, and Yannick Bock can't do anything about it. At the moment, Jo Tyne is the closest to making a move. He's on the back of Manuel Bianculula for 5th position, but even he is not making any moves as of right now into the final chicane. He stays behind, rather orderly, into the Casio Triangle. And surely, when the DRS gets enabled, Jake Danahan will be in trouble. But I reckon he will have planned for that. He will suddenly unleash a bit of speed, I would have thought, when the DRS gets enabled, so he can keep Jan Granqvist and everyone else behind him.
Yeah, and DRS is very, very short around here. In the background, we are getting some moves. As some gaps start to open up, Macheda having to go to the inside. Valeriano 13th ahead, Prosciutto just in behind. So these are still for the points. Remember, points inside the top 15. And for teams low down in the championship, every point counts for the finishing position. So this is going to be very interesting. And of course, with the the big pack that we have behind Jake Danahan, is probably going to keep everyone close together throughout this first stint, which means the opportunities have really opened up for some of these midfield teams.
Yeah, Jake Danahan still 3.5 seconds behind, but at times it looks like Jan Granqvist is struggling to keep up as well, so it's a confusing situation, I've got to say, at the very front of the field. And you see some real gaps opening up there. Joni Simičić has got a bit of a gap ahead of him right now as well, for example. It's all one long line, really. Isaac Killison down in 20th place, I notice here, after a few laps. He's the only one really to have problems in the first couple of laps, but pretty damaging for him, really. He's doubled his starting position, now down in 20th.
That's not that's not the way to do it. We'll try and get a replay of that somewhat surely of how he's ended up down there. We got on board with Jo Tyne, who's been a lovely bit of a breath of fresh air coming into the season. Unexpected to see him come back, but he's been very fast. He, of course, almost won a couple of weeks ago back at Kota, and now he's going to get himself past the Italian of Bianculilla down the start-finish straight. The very short DRS zone we have, Bianculilla has that to try and defend, but it's not enough, and the Norwegian gets up into P5.
Yeah, good pass in the end. Just need to be close enough when you can hit the DRS and you can go down the inside, and that's exactly what Jo Tyne did there, up to a top 5 position. Just in behind Joni Simičić now, and they're right back together again. So the 2 race winners, well, they were both race winners, but they were 1 and 2 at the United States Grand Prix. Now together again here at Suzuka. Let's have a little look back at something. Let's see what happened to Isaac Killison. He was oh dear. Well, he just drove off the road through turn 1 and 2, and then was a little bit wide through the next corners. It was one of those where you get out of line once, and then all of a sudden it feels like you're getting your ears boxed from all directions because you're going backwards and you're not going at the right speed, and then a little bit more contact, you're off the road again. Unfortunate for Hiddleston, really, because it was two pretty small errors that have cost him about 10 places.
And that is how close it is in the World Championship to getting points in P10, P11, or getting nothing down in P20. Crazy. Everyone is on the back straight, apart from McGorgy, who's come down in towards the final chicane. He's in the lead by some 4 seconds now from Jake Dennehan. So this is basically perfect execution of the race so far. They managed to get themselves up inside the top 3. They've got themselves now P1 and 2, and Jake Dennehan is just giving him a nice buffer to the cars behind. So when pit stops happen, no sort of undercut and everything like that can happen. So perfect execution, but that also comes down to the preparation to the race to make sure you are able to come out and execute and you're feeling comfortable with the car and things like that.
Single file through the first sector again, especially for the leaders, as George Zagianis becomes our first DNF of the day here at the Japanese Grand Prix. It's becoming clear, of course, as it always does, that overtaking is not so easy, and so drivers will be looking for other avenues to try and work their way up the field. Let's have a look at what happened between George Zagianis and Isaac Hillison. Zagianis goes on the defensive in towards turn number 2, and then he holds on to the place. Unsure as to where this accident is. I think this is from about a lap ago. Looks like a pretty simple pass from Hillison in towards turn number 1, although it's a very short bit of DRS. Oh, and then
disconnect.
Just seems to disappear. Okay, so it's disconnection. So we did all that waiting round for him, and he disconnects again anyway in 5 laps. So
he's
anyway.
not had the season, has he?
No, not really. No.
Zalichavs has really not had the season, and it's a shame because he was Academy Champion 22. He was up towards the front in Pro last year. Made the step up arguably a season too early into the World Championship, but fair enough, he is a solid driver. But there's been things that are out of his control that have just caused him to have DNF after DNF this season, whether it's been some unfortunate crashes or disconnects or anything like that. It's been quite unlucky.
Side by side as in towards turn number 1. Who was that? It was Petter Burlak making his way through on Manuel Biancalula. So 6th place now for the 2015 World Champion, who, by the way, his title is coming up to a decade old. I'm not sure he'll be thanking me for saying that one, but he is up to 6th place and he's showing that he's still got it. Of course, he's had plenty of drama around this circuit. Can you believe it's been 4 years to the, well, not quite to the day, but almost to the day, since he lost the 2020 World Championship fight to Jurnej Simoncic after a technical failure down here in towards turn 1 at this very venue. It's time has certainly flown.
Yeah, that was 2020 COVID year, and he really was in the run that season. Of course, it was a big battle with Johan Kwikel in the first few races. Then Dennis Jordan got a race win at Zandvoort after Jurnej Simoncic's basically one and only DNF ever in SimRacing. And then it was Burlak who was coming forward. He was a little bit far away, to be fair, coming into this race, which was the penultimate race of the season. He already was quite far back. He needed to beat Simoncic to keep the title alive in Brazil. But into turn 1, he turned right, but his wheel turned left. And ended up in the wall.
Yeah, certainly did. He was doing well. I think he was leading at the time, wasn't he? He was certainly doing well in the race. I thought the odds were certainly stacked in his favour in terms of keeping it alive. But anyway, it's all in the past. Meanwhile, Jake Dennehan onto the front straight again. What seems to be happening here, although Jan Granqvist is trying to prevent it as much as he can, Dennehan driving below par through most of the corners, and then when you get onto the back straight and the home straight, unleashing a lot of the battery to just stay ahead of Granqvist, and then going conservative through the first part of the lap. I mean, look at the best lap times compared to everybody else here. Owen McGorgy obviously has the fastest lap of the race so far, 33.3. The next fastest lap time, because they're all behind Jake Dennehan, is a 34.0 from Petter Burlak. That is an extraordinary difference of 7/10 of a second, 7 laps into the race, and Dennehan is playing a blinder for his teammate at the moment, surely putting his teammate completely out of reach.
Oh yeah, definitely. By the time we get to the first pit stop, McGorgy's basically going to be gone in terms of strategy, and you can't full race clutch really, because they put themselves in this position. It was Yannick Bock who was down in 8th place in qualifying, and guess where he still is, in 8th place. So from his side, I'm sure he'll be disappointed not to have an easier run, but it's 7 laps into the race and he's already 10 seconds off the lead, and he's going to have to do something big on the strategy to try and undercut 6 cars. 6 cars in front of him.
But what this also does is that it really prevents undercuts a little bit, because what this would do is bring Bock almost back out again in the same train if he's not too careful. Now, he might get strung out a little bit more later on, but and he might have a bit of clean air to go to, but as soon as he starts to pit, others will start to think, yeah, that's a good idea, I'll pit too. And then all of a sudden you're getting another train forming. So that's really what it's going to take here. But when do you think is the earliest moment he can realistically get into the pit lane here and start to think about doing an undercut? Because it's not generally his idea of fun, an undercut strategy. It's generally he who is going for a long stint and saving the tyres. This is not his idea really of a good race.
Realistically around lap 15 or so is the rough idea to have a decent hard run to the end. But if you want to try and do double medium, then maybe you need to go a little bit longer than that, or maybe someone wants to swap to a 3-stop and try something a bit different, because if you just follow everyone else and follow the train for the whole race, you're not going to do anything either. So it's an interesting one with how this one is going to develop. The time gap is coming down a little bit between Burlak, Biancalilla, Bock. They were only 3/10 slower than McGorgy last time around, so not quite the 7, but that 6-second gap is still quite something to overcome.
It really is. I'm not sure how anybody's going to really do it. It goes down to 5.9 as we say that, but as I say, Denahan's on the straight, so surely we'll be dumping some of the battery through there and just preventing Jan Grankvist from moving through the field in what's been a good start to the race for Grankvist. He's not had a good final part to the season. DNFs in each of his last 3 races. For the previous championship leader of this series, it's not a good look, but there is Ewan McGorgy, the current championship leader. 5 points was his margin going into the day. If things end as they are right now, he would make this championship look not very close at all. 22 points is his current live gap.
22, almost a whole race win. That is crazy. Bearing in mind he was it 19 points I think at the most behind Bock, and 3 of the last 4 races he's beaten him, and then this would be a big chunk as well. So really a big turnaround. It's Bock's middle part of the season that got him to where he is, but then since then he hasn't been able to do too much more in the way of fighting for this championship. And the thing with Yannick as well is he's quite a chill guy, in that it's not necessarily like he doesn't care if he doesn't win the championship, but he just wants to have fun in the races, which is a nice, it's a nice thing to see as well. But hopefully he can have some fun a bit later and try and do something to maybe at least finish on the podium later today.
Yeah, well, maybe in contrast, I have a feeling Ewan McGorgy is very, very up for this and will be very bitterly disappointed if he doesn't win this. I mean, especially from this situation, but I think from any situation, he would have been bitterly disappointed to not win this World Championship this season. As you say, this season very much has been in phases. The first phase was really chaos, to be honest, at Bahrain and Australia. The races were carnage, and so it left a championship situation after 2 rounds as just completely incomprehensible, and it didn't really make much sense as to what we were going to see for the remainder of the season, although in hindsight McGorgy and Bock were there and they were lurking, although they weren't very much contenders at the time. Then, as you say, the mid part of the season, Yannick Bock really started to show himself, beating McGorgy 3 races in a row, 2 race wins in a row, of course, one of which where he held off McGorgy in the final laps at Singapore. And then McGorgy got going, as you say, back at San Marino. He won, boxed it to 5th. That was the real turning point to close the margin defensively for the first time. And then the only time Yannick Bock has beaten Ewan McGorgy in the second half of the season. McGorgy's finished 2nd, as I'm afraid we've got a big crash down at the Cosmo Prosciutto, former pro champion of the Formula SimRacing World Championship, has finished his season in the wall.
Absolutely. So, I mean, this all started a little bit further back, actually, so let's have a look at this battle. So Danny Van Der Leek diving it down the inside in towards the far chicane. It's maybe towards the back of the field, but they're going absolutely for it. Bit of contact. This brings Isaac Hillison into it, and we're 3 wide coming down the start-finish straight.
That was very close to Timo Glock, remember that? In the final corner. Into the first corner they go, 3 wide. Isaac Hillison gets past both of them, as you'd expect him to be honest. With all due respect, he is the quickest of the 3. And then Cosmo Prosciutto tries to follow them. I was looking elsewhere at the time, so let's have a look at I'm looking at this for the first time. Just a load of dirty air through the S's. You can see how much it's really affecting him. Gets a bit loose through one pot, slides into the second. It's an old school racetrack. Mistakes like that don't go unpunished.
Yeah, they certainly don't. Just did you see how little that wobble was as well?
Yeah.
The absolute little wobble through the left-hander, and as you turn to the right, the weight then goes the other way, a bit of a tank slapper, and he goes around. So very fine margins that we have here. And we've had a pitter of Ruben Macheda. Comes into the pit lane from the end of lap 10, from the mid-pack, and he's now going to try and do this. He did something like this in, I think it was Hockenheim, where he really undercut loads of people with a slightly earlier first stop. And maybe he's on a 3-stop today. That is a bit early to do hard to the end, but let's see what he does.
I mean, if he's seen the race as it's going on so far, he'll realise that track position is quite important, and even if he is on pretty burnt out tyres towards the end, he might be able to make it and hold on to whatever position he'll be holding on to by that stage in the race. I guess we can give Optimal a word here, since it's coming to the end of the season as well, a season that they weren't at the whole of, but they have been pretty much appearing for the first time at the Australian Grand Prix, which was round number 2. They've been a good addition to this championship for sure. They've featured in races. I don't think we've quite seen the Matthew Williams that we did in some other years, especially last time we had a championship finale in 2022, but they've had a decent season overall.
Oh yes, it definitely is. That was a bit close between Burlak and Tyan, but it's the exit of this final corner that really opens up the gaps again, and hinders the opportunity to overtake down in towards the first corner. But always actually having to defend in the background now from Biancalilla, who got a little bit of a run. But yeah, regarding Optimal, considering they came in partway through the season, they're a fairly new team in general, just a couple of years since their establishment really. They're not doing too bad of a job, I would say.
Absolutely not. I think they've been impressive, storming onto the scene in the World Championship. It's been great to have them here. And it's actually a pretty close teams championship. Shows some quite good spread across the board when you take out those first 3 teams, let's say, especially Race Culture have dominated. Evo and Rafa have been slightly a cut above the rest as well, but from 4th backwards it's been very close indeed. Shows a good spread across the 22 cars we've had throughout the season in what, as we said, have been a very good season overall in 2024. And meanwhile, we're on lap 12 of the Japanese Grand Prix, 41 to go. Owen McGorgy is going to have a very lonely race here, but a very important race, and I don't think he's going to take his eye off the ball for any single one of these laps. He's not even going to take a hand off the steering wheel, I bet, over the course of these 53 laps.
And let's be honest, this is the type of race you want to win a championship from this point of view. He's got a teammate behind who I'm not going to say is holding up the rest of the field, but we all know Jake isn't this much slower than Owen. He's obviously just keeping it at a nice pace, enough to keep the group behind, but not enough that he's really pushing as hard as he can. And there's just a nice gap opening up for Owen just to chill, and he has a bit of breathing room should he need to. So it is working out perfectly for Owen at this point in the race. But they've got some hungry drivers behind. We've got Simincic and Tyan. Remember, they finished P1, P2 in the previous race. We got Grangfist, who still has something to prove in this season. Biancalilla as well, who's always feisty. So I wouldn't be surprised if when some pit stops start coming around, which, to be honest, if you want to do double hard now, it's a bit of a long stretch, 2020, but someone might think about pitting now, but especially within the next 5 laps, we're going to see all the pit stops start to happen.
Well, let me raise you this, and you might tell me I'm clutching at straws, but Owen McGorgy has been going at pretty much full pelt for this race so far. His fastest lap is still 0.7 of a second better than anybody else's. Surely, by the law of physics, the guys behind have been saving their tyres a little bit more, because they've all been going consistently about a second slower than McGorgy. Now, but that may not be the case, but also it might well be. Now, Ruben Macheda has just set the fastest first sector, for example, just gone purple. He's going quicker than these guys at the moment. Are we not seeing a situation where Owen McGorgy could theoretically have to pit earlier than the others, end up in this very big train that they've created, and find himself embedded within a bit of traffic?
Potentially, if he pits too early, yes. The pit delta is around 21 seconds, so he would come out a few seconds behind Isaac Hilderson as it stands. But obviously, the longer they go on, the closer he's going to get. Bianca Lilla comes in, though, so this might open the floodgates to some other drivers to do some undercuts, and this might actually save McGorgy, to be fair, if this starts to open up a whole host of drivers. Hard tyres it's going to be. I do wonder, is this going to be the hard two-stop to the end that we are expecting? And where is Ruben Macheda? Remember, Ruben does like this undercut, and I think it's going to bring him into contention to some people that may not be expecting it.
Top 10 it might bring him in contention of. In fact, he was quickest driver last lap round by a mile. 1.1 seconds quicker than anybody else. Well, 1.1 seconds quicker than the leader, sorry. 1 second quicker than anybody else. Yannick Bock was the next fastest, so he's clearly got something left in the tyres, but Ruben Mercedes on new tyres. Manuel Biancalula could well be second place very soon, and that's not an exaggeration, I don't think.
Oh, absolutely not, especially with how slow Jake is going. Jake kind of needs to pick up the pace now and go into the pit lane this time around, because if he doesn't, he's just going to get undercut by a whole load of people.
Everyone can criticise teamwork strategies like this, but they can't cover off everything after all. There is only one Jake Dennehan, and as some might say, I didn't mean for it to sound like that, but you know, there is only one of him, and so he can't cover off everything. And Owen McGorgy's not going to be playing any games by covering anybody off. He's going to be doing his normal strategy at the speed he can do. So Dennehan here is doing his best to hold the guys back who are out there at the moment, but what can he do about Manuel Biancalula on new tyres? Absolutely nothing is the answer to that.
It looks like Jake is starting to push now a little bit. The gaps are opening up a bit bigger that time around, as we had Burlak and then Valeriano come down into the pit lane. So this is the other option for Jake, is now he actually goes his full pace and he spreads out the group behind to sort of negate the space for the undercut. So let's see if that one works out, because lap 15 now, this is a solid lap for the medium tyres. They will be able to do a couple more should they wish. But this is a nice number. Loads of wiggles there for Grankvist. So I think he's pushing to try and keep up with Dennehan, who's starting to pull. You see the gaps in behind are opening up. They're not quite bunched up as they were before.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not exactly foolproof, this strategy, because what Dennehan's doing is dragging everybody second a lap pace back to Owen McGorgy again. So it's not completely, they can't cover off all angles here. And as fast as Jake Dennehan can go, Manuel Biancalula pitted earlier, as we know, took 1.3 seconds out of Dennehan in just the last two sectors alone of the previous lap. He's gone fastest purple first sector again. That was 1.1 quicker than Dennehan, 1.4 quicker than McGorgy, who I believe has got to be in pretty shortly. 15 laps out there, absolute full pelt. I think McGorgy's got to come in soon, but no, he's got Dennehan to cover them off, and into the pit lane as well has come Jurne Simicic.
Yep, perfect reading there from Simcic to work out what Jake's going to do. So Jake had 2 laps there of pushing, and now they're going to come back out. Is that mediums again? Yes, it is for Jake.
I don't know yet.
But it's going to be hard for Simcic. Yes, you're right. Sometimes the graphics take a little bit of a long time. Where is the undercutters, though? As we come out of the pit lane, there is Biancalilla, and he's been able to get through. But here's an important one with Burlak trying to go around the outside of his old mate Simicic.
The 2020 rivals doing battle at the place where it was settled 4 years ago. The 4-time champion comes out on top. Jurne Simicic stays 10th ahead of Petter Burlak. You are right, maybe. Jake Dennehan seems to be on those medium compound tyres. Now, this might be a bit of hindsight 2020, but I personally think Yannick Bock, if he wants to win this World Championship, he shouldn't have gone with Manuel Biancalula and gone for that big undercut, as much as he doesn't enjoy doing them.
Yes, and looking back at Kota, he should have done the longer run on the hard tyres as well, because after he had that contact with McGorgy, 2 laps later, McGorgy pit early for the hards to the end of the race, and he ended up many seconds ahead of Bock, who stayed out on those worn tyres after the spin and the extra wear that he got from that. He was a bit slower for a few laps, got massively undercut, and then wasn't able to regain it, and had, unfortunately, Jake Dennehan on his way in that final stint. So probably would have been beneficial that time to go longer on hards, and he's missed that opportunity now as well. However, going longer means you will be faster later in the race. You just have to do some overtaking.
Now, is Owen McGorgy under threat from Manuel Biancalula, or is he going to be okay? Is he on medium tyres? We don't know, because Jake Dennehan is not. He's on hard tyres, as we suspected. Manuel Biancalula's got a pretty important defence coming up here, though, as out comes Owen McGorgy. Is he going to be ahead here of Biancalula? It's not going to be comfortable, and Biancalula needs to defend here on the way towards 1 and 2, but he can't. Jake Dennehan goes round the outside, and now he'll put the brakes on. Now he will start the group all over again. Owen McGorgy's margin is only 1 second. This strategy is not putting him miles out into the lead by any means, but with his teammate to help him, he is getting this race lead back again in a few moments' time.
And I will still say that race clutches, it has updated, Dennehan is on the hard tyres. I'll say they judged that gap perfectly. That sort of 5-6 second gap was enough to cover off the undercut to make sure that McGorgy still had the race lead. So that was perfect timing from them. And of course, Jake will now go slightly slower to make sure that he has that couple of second gap, and they are back into formation. But Biancalula there almost had that done. I think his problem is Jake, of course, wasn't really burning his battery too much, because Grankvist wasn't really giving him too much headache in that first stint, so he would have been able to just dump it and do anything to make sure he got back into that net second place.
Do you not think, though, this shows that Owen McGorgy's pace compared to those behind him is not actually that much better?
Yeah.
And without Jake Dennehan's assistance here, he would be having a much more uncomfortable evening.
Yeah, absolutely. We still got some people involved. So Grankvist has actually lost out massively here. He's lost out to Biancalula, Simicic and his teammate Burlak. So whatever's gone on there throughout that pit stop cycle, it has not worked out for the Finnish drivers. Let's see what Biancalula does coming into turn 1.
He's got to try and do this. Round the outside through 1 and 2 as Jake Dennehan tries to defend from him on the inside, and he does so just about. Goodness me, he will be aggressive here. We know that. Jake Dennehan was very aggressive in his defence of Jurnej Simicic in the 2023 World Championship penultimate round. Those antics are going to return again. And at the end of the day, this is where the kind of rules of motorsport and the rules of sport really do get used against themselves, because Jake Dennehan can throw cautions to the wind and throw himself at anything here, because in theory, other than morally, as the rules doesn't really matter to him, he is guaranteed to finish this World Championship season in 3rd place no matter what happens today. So he can theoretically do anything he wants. He'll get all the penalties he wants if he chooses to do so. Morally, I think he'll try and stay away from that, but in theory, he could, and it won't matter materially to race clutch or himself.
And he's done nothing wrong so far in terms of his defence and his attack of Biancalula. How much does the Italian want to risk? He's already got a couple of penalties this season. Of course, served a race ban as well for being involved in one too many incidents. How much does he want to risk trying to get past Jake Dennehan? McGorgy's already 3.5 seconds up the road, and realistically, I think Race Clutch might have it covered for him and his race victory today. It just depends if Biancalula wants to try and get away from Simicic in behind.
But if there's another undercut, in the next pit stop cycle, it's very possible that this whole situation can come round again. Ruben Mercedes is now getting run over by Time because he's pitted very early, Mercedes, and so he will be going through a bit of pain here. And Yannick Bott really needs to follow through there. He couldn't quite do it, and now he's retaining 11th. Again, Yannick Bott has been undone by the undercuts of those around him, and that's been the story of the season, certainly in this second half.
I don't know what else he could have done. I guess the only option was to do the Biancalula strategy and then go long on the double hards, but then he would have just been defending all of the race. But at least he might have been up, say where Grankvist is, and be 3 places higher.
I mean, Jake Dennehan's been defending the most of the race. I know that's for other reasons too, but he's not been complaining. He's been quite successful in just defending most of the race. Track position is key round here. And if he wanted to win this World Championship, he had to take risks. And so I don't see what doing the normal strategy here, following what most people do, sort of doing this half and half of not really going that much longer than anybody, but not going for an undercut either. Sort of half and half strategy has sort of put him exactly where he was before. 8th place will not win in the World Championship unless Owen McGorgy finishes down in 13th, 14th position. So he's got to do something different. At the moment, he's just not done that. Meanwhile, Braxtock and Jordan come in after 19 laps.
Yep, which is a nice strategy for doing like 19, 15. hard, medium. So that is on track despite starting on the harder, on the heavier fuel, I should say. And Jordan is going to be undercut by a few people, though. He was back P11, he's now down to P14. But once again, he'll go longer and then try and be faster at the end of the race.
Yeah, it's an interesting way of thinking about it, especially on a track where positioning is key, but he's gone for it, so we'll respect it. There's Ewan Simicic. It's very interesting to, I think, I bet it would be interesting anyway to be in his mind at the moment. Can you imagine what he's thinking, watching Manuel Biancalula experiencing exactly the same thing he was at this very circuit 1 year ago, behind Jake Dennehan, trying to get through and struggling.
It's not easy. And do you remember the the absolute send from Simicic to get the job done and to get the victory? Didn't that seal his championship as well?
Yeah,
one race before the end, so it was quite good because then he could just chill in the final race of the season, which was rather nice. This time around, it is the final race of the season instead, and no championship on the line. But they still want to try and get second place and try and do what they can in the championship either way.
Absolutely. It's a dramatic day in the 2023 World Championship. Another very close season, I've got to say. We've had quite a few of those recently, ever since Ewan Simicic and his 3 on the bounce was broken by him not appearing in 2022. It's been a much closer look to the front of the World Championship. There is a look at the front of this race. Jake Dennehan just ahead of Manuel Biancalula. You get the feeling that Biancalula's given up a little bit on trying to overtake here as we go back to the battles that are pretty important for Jonas Braksuk. Wonder how he's going to work his way through the field in this part of the race, because he was 10th or so before his strategy, but of course he's been undercut by a few of those. That was expected starting on the hard tyres, but that's given him some work to do now.
And just remember, Braksuk is 4th place in the championship. He's the best out of McGorgy, Bach and Dennehan, who we've been raving about all season. And he's the one in behind them as Valeriano having a slight excursion, goes off the track. Where's he gone? He gone into the barrier?
Straight on, yeah.
Oh, I thought he was going to save that for a minute, but he hasn't. He's going to lose a few places. And is that Jordan or Giddison, I should say, getting up the inside? Yes, it is. So that's not how Valeriano would have wanted to do that.
No, certainly not. As we go and have a look at a replay of it. It's into the Degners, and if you just get a little bit too wide, you won't be able to stop it in time. Valeriano there has done a very good job not to go straight on, straight nose into the wall actually, but I'm afraid it's done just about as much as damage as that would have done. He's lost so many places, even behind us, and now got down to 17th position.
Yeah, that's not the ideal one indeed. But yeah, back to Braksuk, who's under attack from Macheda now. He had a mid-part of the season where he went 4-4-4 in Britain, San Marino and Turkey. So he's looking fast. There's Macheda into the pit lane already. So this is a 3-stop.
I love someone doing something a little bit different. It's always a bit of fun.
Oh, he's getting him out of the way, I guess.
I don't really know. What's that leave him? 2 15 lap stints, a 15 and a 16, a 16 and a 16. It's a bit long on the mediums, but he might go for it. I know it says white walls at the moment, but you never know what tyres he's actually got on, because we can't tell just for the moment, but we will find out. Braksuk gets, by the way, back to 10th place. As things stand, that means he will retain 4th place in the championship by a singular point ahead of Ewan Simicic, but if he were to drop to 11th, he would lose that position. That's how tight it is in that battle for 4th. Not entirely sure how bothered either of them are really bothered about that, but it's something to note, and it's a marker of progress for Braksuk. He's about to rejoin that group headed by Jake Dennehan.
Yeah, and he has got a podium this season back in Bahrain as well. So he, that was a crazy start to the season, wasn't it? That race we had Dennehan, Brankfist, and Braksuk on the podium. That's not necessarily something that everyone would have guessed, but that's how we started the season.
Yeah, and the two championship contenders, 7th and 8th. You always get some of those race results at the end of a season, because it's been such a long season. Even though this has been one of the shorter ones, it still feels quite long over the span of 5 months. You go back and look at a race result from months ago and go, what? How did that happen? But that's exactly what happened at the Bahrain Grand Prix, and the enthralling race that we saw. We knew then that it was going to be set up for a fantastic season. And the thing that's been different, I think, about this season to all the others, I briefly mentioned it earlier on, with the fact that Bach and McGorgy between them had only had 1 podium. Well, between them now, they've been on the podium on at least one of them every race other than Bahrain. So it's been a remarkable turnaround for the two of them, and a season where I can't remember new drivers turning up like this with such success for, certainly since pre-COVID days.
Yeah, you're right. So there's been 5 races, so half of the season they've both been on the podium at the same time.
Yeah,
which is pretty crazy. And there's been 3 other races where either of them been on the podium. McGorgy likely is going to be on the podium. So, but that's basically almost every race apart from Bahrain. 9 races, either of them will be on the podium. That is incredible stats for the consistency factor, to be honest. That is really what's keeping them up towards the front. McGorgy's only had 2 races off the podium. Bocca's had 3. That is also a good strategy. They'll make that 4 because unlikely that Bocca's going to be on the podium today. But in theory, he's actually not too far behind in terms of time because there's a lot of cars in the way.
That's the real problem as well. In terms of point scoring, we used to sort of mark point scoring as sort of the thing that really marked a consistent season, because it used to be only top 10. I know it's extended now since 2021, I think, was the last season we had any top 10 scoring points. We have had 5 drivers scoring points in every round so far this season. It looks like they will all get to the line scoring points today as well. The only question mark may be over Dennis Jordan, who has scored points every race and is down in 12th at the moment. Mitchy Hoyer has also done it, despite the fact he's only down in 8th in the driver's standings and has no podium this season either. Jonas Braksuk, Yannick Bock and Owen McGorgy, the other drivers to do so. It might be some sort of record. That's a lot of drivers scoring points every round.
I think that's still something to congratulate, even though obviously more people get points now, as you're mentioning. I still think that is something where you have to credit the drivers, because even though only 5 drivers, or in a normal situation where if everyone driving there'll be 7 drivers not getting points, I would still say it's difficult to get points. For instance, some of the drivers who've come in as reserves, from pro, let's say, stepping up into the World Championship, they've still struggled to get into that points position just because of how difficult it is. So yeah, it's not easy by any means, but it certainly happens. On your day, if you have a good pace, you can get a good result. It's just a tough one. I think for someone like Mitchy Hoyer as well is he definitely hasn't had the preparation that he would have wanted to some of the races this year, but he can still show up, get on the back of the train like this, and then work his way forward.
Yeah, exactly. We're starting to see a repeat of stint 1, really, aren't we, here? Only with an increased margin to Owen McGorgy, who is leading now by 8.5 seconds out over the line for the leaders again. And there's just no sign of this changing. Jake Dennehan in such a comfortable position here. He's fast in the right areas. Not fast overall in terms of lap times, but fast in the right areas. And still his best lap time is only a 34.0, which is way slower than the rest of the field. They're consistently losing more than half a second to Owen McGorgy every single lap. And as I said before, based on what we saw after the first round of pit stops, I personally believe Owen McGorgy would be in a real race here with all the others if it weren't for Jake Dennehan playing this kind of role.
And Jake's even more extreme with the pace this time around. But just for reference, this is the kind of pace that I would be doing at the start of a pro race. And of course, they got simpler fuel and tyres now, but the fact that they are doing that pace and not the proper World Championship pace just shows the comfortable nature of it, and that's why McGorgy is going up the road. And it is one of those things where I would love to see, if you took Jake out of the race, I'd love to see what Bianculilla and Simičić could do against McGorgy. But that's not how the races go sometimes.
To be honest, based on what we've seen so far, I think we would see McGorgy putting up his white flag and letting them through and conserving a margin, because I don't think, even without Jake Dennehan, I don't think Bock would be very many more places up the field, to be honest with you, based on what we've seen from him strategically so far in this race. He is still 8th where he qualified. I don't see what he's done in this race that he would have done differently had Jake not been there, that would have voted him up the order. He's not really done anything to even attempt to move up the order, to be honest. And you mentioned that he does take a bit of a carefree attitude to these races. Maybe doesn't take them quite as super seriously as maybe some others. Certainly I think Owen maybe, but got to think about your strategy a little bit better than this. And I think this race last year was a great example of that. Jake Dennehan realising that to keep the championship alive against Ewan Simicic, he needed to throw the kitchen sink and the rest of the kitchen at Ewan Simicic. And he did. He did something really bizarre. Got himself track position, got himself in a defensive place, defended well for a while until it got to the penultimate and last lap where it started to unravel and Simicic outclassed him in the end and won the title. But Dennehan threw absolutely everything at it. He didn't leave anything on the table. I just wonder whether Bock is going to look back at this race and think, well, maybe I would have done that. I just wonder whether he's going to die wondering a little bit in this race based on what he's done so far.
I would put it out there, though, looking at the pace of Yannick, obviously, especially in qualifying, I don't think he has enough today to win either way.
No, but why not try?
Yeah, that's very true. I did see in the chat, who was it? Oh, it was Ed Hunter saying that maybe he should have done the same as Dennis and Brackshock and gone the hards, because they're actually not too far behind on that strategy. But even then, I'm not sure. But we are starting to see Bianca actually get a little bit closer that time around to Jake. But even if he gets past now, it doesn't matter, because Owen is so far gone up the road.
Well, you say that, but I think they can really put him under pressure here with an early pit stop. The problem they've got is that now that we've already seen some pit stops from some of these drivers, so Ruben Mercedes is going to be a problem for them before long. Danny Van Der Neep has also come in, although he probably won't be a problem for a little while yet. So there is some time yet, and there is 5 laps or so, but the early pit stops have kind of set everybody on this strategy, and it means that undercuts may be a little bit less effective than they used to be. The thing is, if Bianca Lula can get into second, or Simicic can get into second, or Burlak maybe can get into second, I think without Dennehan, maybe they could get a bit close to McGorgy. My point being, I think Dennehan is protecting maybe a bit of a sign of weakness from McGorgy at the moment because of how close it actually got in the pit stop phase last time round. I know there was tyres involved, but I think it exposed a bit of a weakness that maybe McGorgy's race pace is not quite as good as this looks at the moment, and it's could be different if Bianca Lula and Simicic are not being constrained by Jake Dennehan, who's defending in second.
Yeah, the thing for Bianca Lilla is he needs to do 2020 hard. So he still needs to go to lap 33 at the very least. So, so 5 laps including this one. So not the ideal situation, because he's a little bit stuck with that, because he's going to be on the limit this stint and the next. So he doesn't really have any margin to play with. Someone in behind might try and do that. The issue is Bianca is going to pit, 20 laps to go. Jake's going to have to decide if he wants to cover that or to go with, to try and hold on to that position. But then that sort of closes off everyone else, because they then can't go longer, really, because they're just going to be undercut quite a lot.
Yeah, it's very tricky to know what to do here in this 11-man group, which it now is, back to Dennis Jordan, nearly. Callis and Jordan nearly back in with the group again, although they are struggling a little bit. There's the gap. Brackshock's made it, though. He could really make some moves in this last part of the race. He's going to be on medium tyres. He is going to have a lot of catching up to do when he gets there, and then a lot of overtaking to do when he does. But, he's not out of the question, and his main aim, I think, as I say, will be holding on to 4th in the championship, which I think he'll view as a success.
Oh, he should do, especially with the names that are ahead of him and what they've done this season. And he still had 4 top 5 finishes, and he's had 6 top 6 finishes. So he's still been up there a lot of the season. He hasn't been quite as racy as last season. Now, I don't know if you remember, but last season he was quite spicy. Got a few pole positions in there. It's just in the race that he struggled. Whereas now he's still struggled a little bit in the race, but his qualifying has sort of hindered his overall finishing positions.
Yeah, he's got 5 pole positions to his name in his career, and still no race wins, which must be edging on a record. It would be, as you come no surprise to you, it would be his best ever World Championship finishing position, bettering 2021, where he was 6th in the World Championship. There goes Sander Callis into pit lane, looking to undercut, and he'll be completely destroyed by Mercedes, who I think is probably nets maybe about 8th as things stand, but he's on a 3 stop here by the looks of things. And at a track where track position is so important, I don't know if going on a strategy which requires overtakes is the best idea.
No, but with how slow this group behind Jake is, I mean, ultimately, this stint was already 12 seconds slower. Well, maybe 11 because they were about a second behind McGorgy at the pit stop. And we still got a few more laps. So they're going to be, times that by 3 stints, they're going to be 30 plus seconds slower overall race time. And therefore, with a pit stop at 20 seconds, maybe for someone like Mercedes, if he can get clean air, could jump inside that and gain some positions therefore. But we'll just have to see how Jake manages and how the group manages that pace. As that was getting close for, I think it was SimRacing on the back. Oh. Is he going to try and do something?
Well, he might be getting a bit impatient here. SimRacing doesn't really like this kind of racing, I've found. He doesn't like waiting around for the final stint and then going, even though he is very good at it. And now he's going to try and forego that a little bit. Round the outside through turn 1 and 2. The two of them have gone into battle many times in 2024. It's time for one more. Yone Simičić comes out on top and he's up into 3rd place. Jake Dennehan will look over his shoulder now and realise he's got a different challenge to defend from.
Yeah, that was perfect timing from Simičić because Biancalilla's tyres will be starting to hurt. He's got about 3 laps left before he has to come in. Simičić, obviously pitting later, will have a little bit more tyre life left. And now he's going to be doing a repeat of last year. Maybe a crazy move into the final chicane to try and get past Jake Dennehan. But what this should do is turn the afterburners on that race clutch car because Simičić is now feeling racy.
He certainly is, and I think he can go through here, maybe. Although he will have used a bit of battery to get through on Biancalilla. He might have to wait a lap or two to let that charge back up again. Although, let's not forget, Biancalilla had that early pit stop. Is he starting to suffer the effects of that? Because the group is getting a little bit strung out behind him all over again. Jake Dennehan beginning to put his foot down a little bit here as well. He's gone normal pace through the 1st sector, i.e. not very quickly, and then quicker than McGorgy again through the 2nd sector as he tries to put his foot down and get away from the likes of Simičić here. Will Simičić try and make 2 overtakes in 2 laps here and go immediately on the attack again, or will he wait? He's going to wait a little bit longer. Will everybody else be inspired by Simičić and look for moves themselves on the way towards turn number 1? Not quite, but you can just see everyone's got a bit more restless.
Yeah, now Biancalilla is under attack from Petar Belak, the Croatian, as well. So I think the floodgates might start to open, but you never know because it can calm down once more. It also depends on Jake Dennehan's pace, because if he starts going quicker, spreads it out, all of a sudden the space opens up to overtake into, and then the cars ahead start having less slipstream off each other because they're spread out more. When they're all backed up, everyone's so close, they're getting all the slipstream, it's very hard to overtake, there's no space to overtake, and it's just a bit awkward. Whereas if you get that space, then opportunities do open up. So it depends, but it does look like actually Biancalilla has caught up. He did lose a few car lengths, a few important car lengths to Simičić, but it does look like he's in reasonable distance again.
And just quickly here, Cam, I don't know if I put you on the spot, but I do want you to answer this comment in YouTube. If everyone's faster than Jake, then why don't they go through? It looks a bit odd that we're saying that in this situation, but why aren't they?
Their potential pace is faster, but to go faster, you have to be ahead of Jake. Because if you're always following behind, there's no way you can physically go faster, unless on a single lap if you caught up to him. So the reason why they can't overtake is because to overtake, you have to get a run. And where's the best overtaking opportunity? Out of this corner. But you literally can't get the power down. So you always lose that extra car length or two, and then you have to make it up. And the DRS zone is quite short here. You don't have the big braking zone to dive into. You have to do the overtake on pure overspeed. And in general, it's just a bit of a difficult track to overtake, because the other long straights are down the back straight, which starts with Spoon Corner. Again, a long corner where the acceleration is difficult to get down. Then you have a kink through 130R after it. So it's not an easy track.
No, absolutely not. It's turning a bit like into the Azure Grand Prix, isn't it? What was it? With a bit more overtaking, maybe, than what we saw. I think it's been a few years since we've been there, and no one's barely noticed. But this is it's a little bit feels like that, doesn't it?
Did we go last year?
I don't remember. I don't think so.
No, we didn't last year. Yeah, it was 22. Yeah,
was it?
22.
I thought it was 21.
Yeah, do you not remember? We had that crazy battle with Spork and Hoyer in the final stint. There was a big crash with Dennis and Sporkin coming out of turn 1. You must remember that.
No, I don't. No, I don't remember that at all. Wow, that's quite scary. I'm remembering Rodger and that battle in 2021. I thought that was the last. Oh, was that 2020?
No, that was 21. Yeah, because
yeah, 21. Yeah, okay.
And Mocek, who were sister teammates at the time, had a nice ding dong on the final.
Wow,
I think it was like 2 laps to go.
I do not remember the
You must
2022
remember
race at all. No, not at all.
You must remember. There was a big incident.
Oh, Triple Crown! Of course it is, Triple Crown. I remember that now, yeah. Well done. Oh, here we go, racing. Manuel Biancalula's into the pit lane again. And this is pretty much on schedule, as there's an exchange on the road here. Granqvist goes past Burlak, but other than that, Manuel Biancalula's into the pit lane. First of all, where's Ruben Mercedes? And second of all, oh, he's gone in again, so he won't be a concern. Where's Sander Callas is going to be the concern here as well. He is right in this. Sander Callas is going to be ahead of Manuel Biancalula. The worst possible news for the Italian, but the best possible news for Sander Callas, who's racing himself into those top positions. He is on the mediums. He won't go to the end, but he will make a showing inside the top 5.
Yes, he will. He'll get some airtime for ground effect, and that is certainly nice to see. But I don't know what he can do on the long term, because Biancalula will be fast. You can see he's already catching up through the S's there, and as we know, Callas in a few laps will have to pit anyway, but he is going to be annoying, let's say, to some of these top drivers.
Oh, here he goes down the inside. Biancalula really could afford without this. And there's contact as well. He'll be furious with Callas, not really because of the driver, but because of circumstance. And Manuel Biancalula is seeing his race plan fall apart in front of his eyes. He's looking at the inside into Spoon. It's not working. He's looking on the outside. It won't work there either. He's going to have to do it into 130R. If Jake Danahan comes into the pit lane this time, he's covered off every undercut for this entire race. And he comes in now. Biancalula is furious.
And he needs to be careful not to crash into each other coming in towards the final chicane, and that's not going to be enough. Biancalula's going to have to absolutely send this, dump his battery to get past, but what is it going to do when we get down to turn 1?
Danahan's going to be in the lead here. He's going to be ahead of them all. And Manuel Biancalula is going to be seething. He's not gained anything from this undercut. He goes down the inside of Callas now, but he'll slam his steering wheel in frustration. He is going nowhere. Jake Danahan has covered off successfully all the undercuts of this race, and he's left his teammate Owen McGorgy to ride to a title now alone. Although there will be traffic here if McGorgy comes in right now. He will, of course, be a little bit concerned about the undercut of those who have currently gone on to new tyres. But with his teammate ahead of his rivals, Owen McGorgy is in championship winning position.
Oh, he certainly is. And with that gap that he had at the end of the second stint, the undercut doesn't even matter. He can stay out as long as he wants, probably even go to mediums again at the end and have that easily covered off. So you cannot fault Race Clutch for their race plan. They I would actually probably want to see the start again, because they probably had that in their plan on the formation lap to try and make sure McGorgy got into the lead in turn 1, and then Jake's just done the job he's needed to do, and so far he hasn't had to do anything really that sketchy apart from that re-overtake on Biancalula.
Yeah, exactly. That was the real moment of this race. You always talk about real moments in championship finales. The moment you realise in hindsight that it was done, that may turn out to be the moment. As Mitchie Hoyer comes in, so does Isaac Hillison, which really clears the path for Owen McGorgy now to make his pit stop and come out in clean air-ish. He might come out behind the likes of maybe Dennis Jordan. It shouldn't be too bad, but we'll see when/if he makes this pit stop at the end of this lap. Danahan and that overtake on Biancalula may be the moment that we look back on at the end of this race. But let's not take anything away from that start strategy, by the way. You mentioned it there like it was easy at the start. They still, what they effectively had to bank on was Owen McGorgy getting a better start than Jan Granqvist, and then being in a position to take the lead also from his teammate into turn 1. Very well executed in the end, but could have gone wrong so easily. Even with just an average start from McGorgy, it would not have worked.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not saying they purposefully did it, but they just made sure, 100 meters into the start, that when the opportunity arose, they made sure that McGorgy was going to get through. And you saw it already, because even after the end of Sector 1, he had a second gap. So Dennehan was just making sure that he was helping his teammate along the way. And to be honest, McGorgy is going to be a deserved champion with the speed they've shown and with the determination as well. I mean, there's certain races like Turkey, like Singapore, like Hockenheim, where they didn't do the strategy. They did not do the right strategy at all, but he still salvaged a good result.
Yep. Hockenheim, really the only race where they really got it wrong, Race Clutch, and they really did that day, finishing 6th and 5th respectively, the two teammates. It was a bad day, and Bock certainly gained on them that day, as did Simičić, who was looking to make a resurgence at the time. But in the end, it was the engine failure at the British Grand Prix at Silverstone and the subsequent 15th at San Marino that really undid his season. So with Yannick Bock into the pit lane and back out again, he's even further behind. He's been undercut by Michi Hoyer now. This has been a pretty disastrous race for Yannick Bock, to be honest. His championship charge has gone out with a bit of a whimper.
Yes, it's slightly disappointing to not see a 1v1 battle at the front like we saw in Melbourne, let's say, or even Turkey. Was it Turkey or Singapore? It was the British Grand Prix as well. So many times they've been side by side, as that wonderful video from Ed Hunter showed, but just not today, not on it. Half a second off the pace in qualifying, and the strategy not going the way of Yannick. But to be honest, as McGorgy comes in, I'm not saying Bock isn't trying, but I would assume at some point in the first stint he realised it's probably not going to happen. So don't do anything absolutely ridiculous and throw it away completely.
Maybe after qualifying, to be honest, he might have realised. But I mean, he can't lose second, so I don't see why he wouldn't throw caution to the wind. But anyway, it's all in the past now. McGorgy comes out the pit lane after a very important pit stop. And that is the pit stop that could see him on the way to a world title. 6.5 seconds between he and his teammate. All he's got to do now is stroke it home. You mentioned there the wheel-to-wheel battles between McGorgy and Bock, and you're absolutely right. There's been so many this season, and we've certainly not been short on them. They finished nose-to-tail in Bahrain, Australia, Singapore, Turkey, and that is a pretty remarkable record for a top two who have been going at each other. But within those races as well, they've been wheel to wheel. It's been extraordinary. It's been a great season. Unfortunately, so far in these first 37 laps, maybe there's another twist in the tail here in the final 16 laps, but it's probably not been the championship finale that this season has really deserved.
No, not with the close battle that they had. And as you say, the points gap at the end is going to look more severe than it should be. But, that's what happens. And to be fair, Bock did get stuck in a couple of races, in a couple of important races as well, such as San Marino in 5th place when Ewan had a pretty dominant victory, and of course last time out as well, just not being in the ideal situation, as Tyne is going to come in to leave Brackshock to lead a lap with Dennis Jordan coming in as well.
Yep, so that's going to cleanse the field now, as they say, and give us a situation where Ewan McGorgy is in the race lead all over again. And there goes... Yeah, oh, no, not quite. Janus Brackshock, obviously, but it will happen very soon. There goes Yoltide. I think he's the only driver to do medium, hard, medium, isn't he, if he's going to do it here? Correct me if I'm wrong, but out the pit lane he goes. Bock will get ahead of him, and eventually Bock will be 9th when Brackshock comes in. But I do just wonder, with the strategy that Race Clutch have employed today, I wonder whether these late medium runners are going to really enjoy that, because effectively what Dennehan's done is set the pins up in for them, to use a bowling analogy. He's effectively stood all the pins up and given them a ball and said, have a go on this. And at the moment, Tyne and Jordan and eventually Brackshock will have all of the drivers in front on old tyres pretty much at their mercy in front.
Oh yeah, you are correct. They've already been on it 5 laps, so I think it's going to work out quite nicely for them, but they're going to have to do some overtaking. So Tyne, he's a couple of seconds behind Yannick Bock, just to make the Germans' day even worse. And with how close everyone is, if Tyne can make a couple of moves, get himself back up nicely inside that top 10. And of course, Callas still owes us a stop too.
Yep, he does. Yes, thanks for reminding me about that. 6th place for Callas, of course, will have to come in again because he was on those mediums a good few laps before Bianca-Lulu was on those hards, and so he's certainly not going to make it. In goes Braxton. There's Bock now starts to make some moves. Round the outside of Mitchie Hoyer he goes, and that was pretty convincing. I don't think Hoyer particularly wanted to get involved there. Not entirely sure why, really. It's all a battle for position at this stage. Nothing else really matters as Braxton goes to the end of the group. He will hang on here, Bock, to that position in turn 1. So a nice move that maybe he could have done with about 30 laps ago.
Absolutely. So Braxton is going to come out, I should say, behind Jordan, as expected with the undercut. And now these three on the medium tyres, chasing down Hoyer, Bock and Co up ahead. Let's see how many positions they can get. But overtaking has not been very common around this track today. I think that is fair to say. I do think that is also circumstantial to Denahan backing everyone up, so just emphasising the DRS train aspect. If they spread out and there was sort of some pairs and trios that formed rather than a whole line of 11 cars, I think we would have seen some more overtakes.
Yeah, very possible. The old Tyne has got a real chance here, hasn't he, to get a podium here. Sorry, go on.
Someone's had a bit of an issue moving the shader. Looking strong at one point in the race, but not so much now.
I think he's made one too many pit stops today, but nevertheless, this is not going to help his cause no matter what pit stop strategy he's gone for. Just that tiny slide at Dunlop corner. And it goes back to the thing you were saying earlier on about Cosmo Prosciutto when he went into the wall and ended his season in a heap on the floor. It was, these cars do not take much to get away from you, and this circuit does not take much for granted at all. It will gobble up your front wing very, very quickly indeed, and it certainly did there.
We're going to see Grankvist have a nice easy run. There's an overtake, but not necessarily the most difficult one in the world. In the back, we're seeing Bock get towards Peter Burlak as well. So Bock is now starting 40 laps into the race to try and make some moves.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see him make a few moves and show himself as a strong contender. I hope to see him back next year, of course. It is his first season where he's done all the races. He was a pretty much full-time member of the 2023 TX3 team, but do you remember his season didn't get off on a very good foot? Do you remember at Bahrain? I can't remember who his teammate was, but they hit each other on that one. And Mark Schluter, was it maybe? Anyway.
Last year.
Last
TX3,
year,
yeah, Mark Schluter going into turn 4.
They hit each other on the very first lap of the season. That didn't get things off to a great start. Still finished 8th though in the season, I suppose, and this is, I suppose, his second full season, but he's never had a season like this in the World Championship before. And I think when he looks back at it in December or so, when this finale is a few months in the past, he will look back on it with fondness and as a marker of progress, actually. And I really hope, as I say, he returns in 2024, because it's going to be, if we get the same grid again, at least some of the same names again, it's going to be a really stacked grid. I mean, look at some of the names we've got in the top 10 right now. Imagine if all of these 10 here for a full campaign, a full 2025 campaign, would be absolutely wonderful to see.
And just look how many teams there are as well. That's what I'd like to see up there as Callas comes in for his final stop to get out of the way of a couple of drivers. That gives another position, of course. So that puts Bock up into 7th place. But remember, Bock actually was in 8th at the start, so he's only really made that one overtake net during the course of the race so far. Jordan gets himself back up inside the top 10 with that, but it is Tyne leading the way now on this medium trio of cars, and he is going to be overtaking Hoyer very soon, I would expect, or at least attempting to do so.
Yeah, I mean, Hoyer got overtaken by Bock, so I'd expect someone on a newer and fresher compound, a better compound, would make even lighter work of him as well. 12 laps to go at the end of this race. Just doing some calculations, by the way, Cam. This is the 4th ever championship finale in the Formula SimRacing World Championship. I can tell you we're living in unprecedented times, because that's an average of 1 every 6 years. We've seen 2 in 3 seasons here. We're very, very lucky indeed to have had these last few seasons. And indeed, of course, 2023, which so nearly came down to that final race with so much drama at this very venue. on the penultimate round. These are unprecedented times in the Formula SimRacing World Championship. These are some of the best times this championship has ever seen, and at the moment it's Ewan McGorgy who's going to add his name to the list of winners. Out of the final corner goes Yannick Bock as he still continues to try and chase his championship rival. He's put up a good fight this season, and he's going to move through the field again here into 6th position as things get a little bit more spread out now. Jake Dennehan beginning to use some speed. It's opening up for Yannick Bock, and he's into 6th position.
Yeah, nice move there for Yannick. And what position does he need if Owen has a random mishap? That is, I think, the next thing to look at. Should he finish? So if he finishes in 6th, McGorgy needs to be 12th or worse. So McGorgy does need a big issue, but of course if he had an issue now, then that would put him into 5th. So McGorgy would need to be 10th or worse in this position.
Yep, that's the absolute minimum. 10th place at Bock, absolute minimum for Bock. Otherwise it won't happen. So it's a situation that's looking pretty dire now, I'm afraid, for the German. He will have known that for quite some time, but the realisation for Owen McGorgy might only just be hitting him. 11 laps to go at the line, and Suzuka, I bet for him, has never felt quite so long.
It's true. 45 laps was the pro race distance, so he's almost getting to the end of that. But then, of course, World Championship is a bit longer, so you've got to do those extra 8 laps to get to the end. And they will feel, well, from here, 10 laps to the end, these will feel like the longest 10 laps of his life, because he's in a position where he kind of knows it's done, but it's not done. So you just have to keep going. No mistakes, no chunking of the big curb in towards Degner 1, no hitting the curb on the outside of Spoon like we've seen a few times, and no sort of wiggling on the rear end like we saw with Cosmo Prosciutto.
Owen McGorgy leads now by 12.13 seconds. There he is. We're not seeing much of him today, and I'll give you a stat since he's on the screen, and maybe I'll surprise you with this one, Cam. Or I'll make you guess. This is the 24th Formula SimRacing World Championship. Which number champion do you think Owen McGorgy and Yannick Bock are trying to become? How many champions have we had so far? Which number is this going to be today?
So we've had 24 total.
Don't work it out, just have a guess.
8. That's probably more than that.
No, it's more than that. He will become the 14th, if indeed he continues. Owen McGorgy. Bock also going for 14th. We've had 13 so far. Only 2 drivers, I will add to... 3 drivers to have won it... 4 drivers to have won it more than once. Only 2 drivers to have won it more than once, not consecutively, in the history of the World Championship. Not saying that McGorgy and Bock can do that at the moment, but just one for the future there, maybe, as we continue over the years. Someone like Spork or Simicic, who's still on these kind of grids, still around, can try and win although Simicic already is one of those 2, of course, who's won a title, multiple titles, not connected to the other ones. Going against Bolo House's ambitions of just winning them all at once, which he did in the early 2010s. On board we go with Rd.10, still in this long train. I was really expecting these medium runners to make more moves here, but they're not really going anywhere. Even those on better compounds are finding it a real struggle.
Yeah, and Mitchie definitely used a lot of battery there at the final corner as well. Absolutely pulled away, using the slipstream of Burdak as well. So tough conditions out there for the drivers. And I mean, to be honest, we've been saying that about Bock. I mean, he's still gained 2 places. There's not many drivers on the grid that can say that.
True.
Ironically, one of the other ones is his championship rival of McGorgy, going from 3rd to 1st.
Interesting comment came in a while ago from Lauren Kiersmerkers, by the way, who obviously I expect knows Yannick Bock fairly well, and made me think whether maybe this circuit and the format that general Grand Prix racing actually takes place on didn't really benefit him today. Mentioned that Yannick always races better than he qualifies. That's what Lauren said anyway. And while I don't always necessarily go along with that, but I guess he hasn't taken a pole yet this season, so maybe he is correct in that thinking. Do you not think that maybe that weakness in qualifying has led to a poor track position here? And what we have seen from him is a good race by the standards of Suzuka, but he's just been held back by poor track position because of his qualifying.
So what you're saying is by me changing the final race of the season to Japan, I've hindered his chances.
Maybe, yeah, maybe. Well, including Japan at all hinders it in effect, doesn't it? Because imagine if this was the penultimate round. Just doing the maths quickly at the moment, Bock is in 6th position, losing 15 points. That would be 20-point gap. That would rely on McGorgy finishing only 11th or better at the final race. You know, that's not really strenuous for McGorgy. So, you know, even if we had 11 rounds with Interlagos after this one, you know, it doesn't matter. It's still, its inclusion does mean that he will lose points, surely. But I guess this is the thing, you've got to try and overcome that somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was changed for a reason, to make it, well, something a bit different, but also to make it a bit more of a potentially tight final race of the season. And this is what we've ended up with, is that exact race. There has been actually quite a few movers, though. I mean, Gragfist, he's lost 3 positions from the start. Simoncic, Biancalil have done well to get past him. Berlak's been getting involved. Of course, Hoyer's moved up some positions as well. So things have wiggled around. It just hasn't been one of those completely crazy up and down, topsy-turvy races.
Yep, here comes Yoltain. I think maybe now he's finally beginning to make his move. He's left it late, to be fair, with only 7, 8 laps to go, but he's moving to the outside now into the chicane, and Hoyer's fighting this one harder. He didn't do this to Bock at all, but he knows this is his race for 8th place. Oh, and he's into the grass, he's into the gravel. Mitty Hoyer off the road, I'm afraid. He needs to get going again here so he can retain his point-scoring run here, and I'm not sure he's too bothered about that, but he'll be more frustrated. He's lost the positions. Not really sure how to call that one. Hoyer seemed to get into the grass and the gravel, and it will unravel very quickly there.
Yeah, this is from Tyne's point of view. So he leaves plenty of space. Hoyer's going to pinch him on that apex, to be fair. So I don't know if there's too much more that we can say from that point of view, because Hoyer is going to just close him off in that first apex, get nudged a little bit wide.
He lost it on his own. Yes, he lost it on his own. He didn't really get in the grass at all. Apologies. So it's traction, really. No one to blame for that, really. But Mitty Hoyer drops to 11th in the field, I'm afraid. As I mentioned, point scorer from every round this season, but this would only be his 2nd result outside the top 10. What's realistically been a decent season for Hoyer, although I feel like every season since that start of 2021 season that he had those few years ago, any season where he doesn't win a race or doesn't compete for the title or anything like that, any season where he's having those moments, it feels like a bit of a downward season, because we know he can do better than what he's had in 2024 and every year since 21.
Oh, absolutely. The last couple of years just haven't gone the way that he would have wanted. Of course, he did miss a couple of races, importantly last season for various reasons, but he still didn't have an outstanding season, only a best result of 6th in 2023. And coming then obviously into this year, he did have 1 4th place in Singapore and a 5th place in Belgium, but even then, not what he would have wanted, as we have had some issues. Petter Berlak has gone off the road, and that is an important figure in this top 10 race. Let's see how he works out.
Was he not involved with Yoltain? I think Tyne was coming up to the back of him. So, yes, he was. Tyne has gone down the inside there, maybe ambitiously. And Berlak's lucky, his rear end is still on, actually. Let's have a look at what happened. Tyne's looking at the inside. Oh dear, he's barely alongside there. He's very much carted Berlak off the road, and he might land himself in trouble for that.
Yes, he might do. A bit late, and only his front wing alongside. Yeah, I think that is not going to be a nice one. And Berlak did actually hit the wall fairly decently, but he's got his rear wing still on it. So as we go back to live pictures, he should be okay. That reinstates Mitty Hoyer up inside the top 10, and Dennis Jordan actually up to 8th place after a bit of a quiet race for him. He's now trying to follow time through.
Yeah, and next up is Yannick Bock, so that could be interesting to see. So I'm generally, I generally don't like penalising people for making late moves, because I think, you know, if everyone's expected to do everything in loads of time, then everyone's going to be expecting every move, and no moves will ever be made. So I never really enjoy that. But that, even by my standards, that was quite late from Tyne, so he's going to be in trouble. Oh dear, Valeriano is going to end his season in the garage, I think, because I think that was him with no front wing on down at the final chicane, and it was in a battle. He slid himself from the looks of that. Oh, gone straight into the side, I think, of Sander Callas.
Yes, it was. They already had a bit of contact. Not quite contact to the braking zone, actually. He slides wide and just couldn't regain the traction. And there goes Callas dragging his front wing. So it's a shame for Valeriano, who I would say will be disappointed with his season, considering looking where Biancalilla is. And it's not like Valeriano is a bad driver. He just hasn't quite had the pace he would have wanted.
Yep. It's been a list of DNFs that now grows to 3. Valeriano joining Cosmo Prosciutto and George Dargianis in the garage, although we haven't had a DNF for quite some time. Out over the back straight they go again. Biancalilla will be under pressure a little bit from Jan Granqvist, who's with Yannick Bock at the moment as well. Not entirely sure they're going too slowly anymore, to be honest, although they are still all losing time to Jake Dennehan. To McGorgy. Jake Dennehan's still at the front of this group, of course. Can't really tell if they're still lifting off the gas here, but they may well be. Feels like there's little point really for Jake Dennehan. He might as well just drive at the speed he can do, because I mean they're never going to catch McGorgy, are they?
No, not at this point in the race. So you're right. He doesn't need to go slow enough that he's going to take risks anymore. There were points earlier in the race where he was almost going too slowly at some points, but I think he's controlled that pace perfectly throughout the remainder. Obviously, he's been in that position for 49 laps now, or 48 really. So he knows what he's doing at this point. He knows how to judge it, and I'm sure he's probably got an engineer with him telling him the pace of the cars behind and the gaps to just know that he's not bunching them up too much, because you can obviously overdo it to a point where it actually causes some issues behind, but he's controlled it perfectly that I would say hasn't really caused issues for other people.
No, if you sort of cause unrest in the group behind, if you like, and you start seeing moves further down, people start looking in the mirrors and starting to see the person behind them change, which encourages them to go for a move ahead of them, and then all of a sudden Jake Dennehan himself is being attacked in the lead. But there was that one moment where Biancalilla really attacked him. He got overtaken, of course. He did that undercut, got overtaken, then gave it another go the lap afterwards. Those were the real goes that Biancalilla gave it. After that, couldn't really do anything else, as Jarl Tyne now has a look at Yannick Bock. This is a pretty big moment as far as Jarl Tyne's race goes. He might still be able to salvage a top 5 here from this alternate strategy, but a move needs to be made pretty quickly. Down the straight they go. They're all in one long line. Oh, and that's big defence from Biancalilla. Here goes Granqvist, who's making the move towards turn 1 and 2. Here he goes round the outside. This would be quite something if he can make it work. Oh, he's been carted off the road, I'm afraid, from Biancalilla. Here goes Bock. He can't go down the inside. Jarl Tyne might try and go through as a result on the newer, fresher, softer tyres. Jarl Tyne's going to go through here, is he? Yes, he is. Yannick Bock back to 7th place, losing further points in his championship charge.
And there was not a lot he could do, because naturally he kind of had to go around the outside of Granqvist. Possibly could have backed out of it a little bit earlier. But either way, I think Tyne was going to be getting past him soon enough, and now Tyne can actually make some moves. And it's a shame, because Bock could have been up into 5th place there. That could have been an opportunity, but instead he's down into 7th place, and it is just unraveling a little bit championship-wise now as we count down the laps. Just 3 laps remaining before we can crown the new champion. But stranger things have happened, and Bock is still in a position to take that title should McGorgy have any major issues.
Absolutely. He would be doing just about enough, but it would have to be a DNF pretty much, and a drop outside the points for the current championship leader and current race leader as well, with 3 laps to go of the Japanese Grand Prix. Ruben Mercedes now off the lead lap, I'm afraid. It's been, I think, a 5th pit stop for him now. He's going to come out right ahead of these two, which is not... I know he's going to stop. Well done. Well done, Ruben Mercedes. Stops. I mean, if you saw this lot tearing down the front straight in front of you, I wouldn't leave the pit lane either.
Yeah, that was a good call. Whether that was him seeing it or an engineer, a spotter telling him stop, stop, stop. We don't normally like cars stopping on track and on pit exit, but I think we'll allow it for that that opportunity.
Not going to even. I hope you're not going to give him a penalty for that. I know you're in charge around here. Here goes Peter Burlak back side by side with Isaac Killerson here, who's had a fairly anonymous race after a poor start. And a season of building for him very much. It's been interesting for Scuderia Ferrari eSports this season, I think. It's not been like them at all. Dennis Jordan has very much not been like himself. Alex Siebel has been improving year on year on year and has not been like himself and has not been here for quite some time now. It's been a bit of a shame, really, for this team, considering the success they've been having elsewhere on rFactor 2.
Absolutely, and considering the amount of effort that Dennis Jordan put into pre-season, making the modifications to the car for this year. Of course, it's basically the same car as 2023, but with some adjustments, and he was the main protagonist in that, but wasn't able to get on top of it. It was Race Clutch who did, and I mean, I guess, and his sort of teammate as such, Yannick Bock, as our sister teammate. So yeah, it just wasn't Dennis who was able to get on top of it, despite obviously the extra knowledge as such. But that just shows you how it's not all about that. It's about the execution on track.
He's made a car that doesn't suit himself. It's quite impressive. But, I'm joking, of course. But they might not be joking. You don't know. But yeah, it's not been the season for Dennis Jordan, I'm afraid, or indeed Scuderia Ferrari eSports. They are, I think, still going to finish 4th in the Teams Championship, although that is going to take quite some maths, and I'm not quite prepared to do at the moment. I think they'll be okay, though, in terms of points. In terms of second place, there was only 7 points between Evo and Rafa eSports team at the start of the day, but the fact that Yannick Bock doesn't have a teammate today has not only hurt him in the Drivers' Championship and hurt him throughout the season, actually, I think, but it's actually hurt them in the teams too, because they are going to lose that second place. They're going to drop to 3rd behind Rafa eSports team, who've been maybe below where they would have expected. But you know, when you've got a 4-time champion on your list, anything other than the World Championship is a bit of a disappointment.
But remember, Yannick got position penalty in Australia for that send that included,
and the crash itself.
Yep, exactly, for Jake Denahan, I think it was, who got caught up in that, and Alex Siebel. Then he had the DNF with the engine blow. He also missed a race as well back in Belgium. So basically 3 races where he was not scoring points, and that is very unlike him. And then San Marino as well as 15th after the collision with Bianca Lilla. So really 4 races he didn't really score points. So it's not really a surprise. Here we go.
Here we go. The final laps are upon us, and the battles are upon us too. Here goes Jurnej Simoncic in a repeat of 2023, and that's exactly what happened last year too. Jake Denahan defends from Jurnej Simoncic right on the line as far as pushing someone else on the track goes. Last year it was probably just over the line. This year it might well be just about the same. We'll have another look at it, but this is what happened in the final couple of laps. All hell breaks loose. Everybody lets it go and gives it a go in towards turn 1 and 2. Simoncic on the outside, and doesn't get afforded any room there, I'm afraid. So that's very similar to last year, and a bit of a black mark against the name of Jake Denahan, but I don't think he'll mind.
That was literally a carbon copy.
It
but
was.
We'll forget that for now, because Ewan McGorgy has executed this race along with his teammate absolutely perfectly.
It's time for his crowning moment. The first British champion in 7 years. First championship finale we've had in a couple of years. Hasn't quite produced the drama of 2022, but it has produced a 2024 world champion. And his name is Ewan McGorgy, a first-time champion. Ewan McGorgy crosses the line at Suzuka and burns it down as he celebrates the 2024 championship, winning in the end by seconds upon seconds. His teammate Jake Denahan deserves the title just as much as he almost. He assisted McGorgy all of the way, and there goes Yannick Bock across the line in 7th. The championship at the end of the season is not going to look favourably upon him. He will go down in the history books as falling 21 points short.
Big shame for him in terms of the points, but in terms of the races, he had a very, very strong season indeed. And the final point of the season will go to Danny Van Der Neat on the soft tyres for Netrex. Not necessarily the season that they would have wanted, but a big signing of Jarl Tyne returned them to the podium last time out at Circuit of the Americas. But for the front of the field, as Tyne's doing a 360 there, big drifting from McGorgy as they celebrate not just the Drivers' Championship, but remember the Constructors as well. They already had that one sealed coming into today.
Yeah, Ewan McGorgy, the 14th ever Formula Sim Racing World Champion. There he is, driving alongside his teammate, who he's got to thank every little bit just as much as himself for the World Championship here this season, especially in this final race, and these last couple especially as well. Denahan has finished behind McGorgy now for the last half of the season. Effectively, they must have decided at one stage. McGorgy was finishing ahead of Denahan anyway. It's time to throw their weight behind the British driver, and McGorgy delivered. He's delivered a title for the first time for Britain in 7 years. The wait for Germany goes on. It's been 15 years since they won a title, and Yannick Bock couldn't quite end that list, but if he comes back again in 2025, he'll have just as much of a chance as he did this time round, if not better, because at the end of the day, it's worth reiterating again, these two were not the favourites for this title, yet they've gone into battle in the final race. Dead level almost, only 5 points apart into the final race. An extraordinary end to the season. If you'd have shown everybody the standings after 9 rounds at the very start of the season, not many people would have believed you, that's for sure.
Yeah, it started with some absolute craziness, really, with how close it was. We had Bianca Grandfist. I'm actually glad that they had a good final race of the season in P4 and P5 because they deserve to be up there.
Yep.
It didn't quite go their way. There was a couple of tough races, a couple of penalties. I mean, Grandfist as well. I mean, he just absolutely... So Bianca gets a race ban. Maggio replaces him. And then Grandfist absolutely sent Maggio up at Les Combes in the first stint and got a penalty for that as well. So it just didn't work out for those two. But I'm glad that they ended the season on a pretty high with a top 5.
And Race Clutch are going to do some donuts, not only to celebrate the team's championship victory, which they've absolutely taken and ran with by over 150 points, but also for Owen McGorgy, the drivers' champion. I think they were going to try and do something very smart there, but it's not turned out very well. Let's see them do some proper donuts, shall we? Owen McGorgy finally does get it going, and maybe Jake Denahan can do the same just next to him. Denahan's not very good. Neither of them are very good at this, but anyway, they're burning some rubber on the front straight, celebrating a victory. They won't care. I'm sure they're absolutely delighted with their season, with their championship win as well. Thoroughly deserved victory, and it's his 4th of the season. Owen McGorgy, the Japanese Grand Prix winner, ahead of Jake Denahan, who did so much of that defending for him. Jonas Simicic's podium gets him to 4th in the championship, ahead of Jonas Braxot, who finished down in 9th. Manuel Biancalina and Jan Grankvist, as he said, pleased to see them both inside the top 5. It's Jan Grankvist's first top 5 since Australia, which feels like a lifetime ago. Jo Tyen in 6th place, which is exactly where he qualified. Yannick Bock's 7th place wasn't quite enough. He finished his 2nd in 2024. Dennis Jordan finishes 8th at the end of the season, with Jonas Braxot and Michi Hoyer rounding out the top 10. 11th place was Petter Burlak, the 2015 World Champion, finishes another season outside the top 10. Isaac Hillerson, 12th place, almost recovered back to where he qualified. Sander Callas finished 13th, better Thomas Back, the best of the up-terminals, with Danny van der Neep 15th, the final point scorer of the season. Sturgeon Barbakov, who frankly didn't really see us all in that race, finished 16th, better Ruben Machete, who was causing a bit of a ruckus with some of his early pit stops. And then the DNFs, Giordano Valeriano, Cosmo Prosciutto, and George Zalagianis. Well, that is it for the racing. Let's have a chat to the champion. Owen McGorgy joins us now along with his teammate Jake Denahan. Owen, first of all, congratulations on the title. How are you feeling after 53 laps of Suzuka tonight?
I cannot put it into words. The feeling crossing the line was incredible. I had most of the race to try and let it sink in because I knew I had the pace. I was so confident in myself during the race. Maybe not so confident during all the practice. I was doubting myself, but I won it.
Absolutely, and I noticed right from practice that you were very focused in terms of lap times, in terms of qualifying, but I'm sure that was reflected in the race as well. I want to know how much practice you actually put in for this race. It's not been that long since we went racing at the US Grand Prix 3 weeks ago now, I think it was, and obviously there was quite a show between yourself and Yannick Bock. It was only 5 points going into this, so how much practice did you put into this final race?
More than enough, I think. I probably completed God knows how many laps. I can try and check 365 laps, and I started too many more than it should have been. Many failed laps, but it was just all part of the process. And in practice, I had a lot of help from everyone at Race Clutch, and for this round specifically, especially Colin. So I've got to say a massive shout out to Colin, and obviously a massive shout out to Jake. And there's probably too many people to name. I'll probably forget someone, so I'll refrain from listing everyone off.
Well, just to bring your team in as well here, Jake Denham also joining us. I mean, there was a clear game plan for Race Clutch, not only in terms of the preparation that Owen's mentioned there, but also in terms of the race plan as well. Would you say that was executed pretty much 100% as you dreamt it up?
I think so. I think it went all right. Probably a bit better than I expected, to be honest. I didn't think we would have such a pace advantage, but of course I knew going into the round that we had a pretty quick car because we put more laps in for this race than in any other round in the championship, and it turned out being the easiest race probably out of them all, and also the most important one. So I think it went pretty well.
I mean, how do you reflect on the season for yourself finally, Jake? I mean, 31 points behind Owen going into today. You're going to drop a few more, obviously, but I'm sure you won't mind. You are the team's champion, of course, and you've contributed along with Owen to that. I guess this season also has gone almost as well as you could have dreamt it up as well.
Yeah, I'm quite happy with my performance. 31 points behind the championship, you said, but of course, I kind of gave up a little bit early to help out Owen, and it ended up being the right call, I think. But yeah, obviously I missed the race as well, so that didn't help.
And just using a bit of hindsight here as well, by the way, 35 points would be your eventual margin to Owen. Obviously, we won't know what would have happened if you'd have actually been at that race or what would have happened. But anyway, forgetting all about that, what stage in the season did you decide to throw your weight behind Owen? Because there was not a single race in the second half of the season where you finished ahead of him.
I think it was just about at Silverstone. Even at Silverstone, I was kind of second guessing myself, overtaking him in the race near the end. I thought that was going to come back to haunt us at the end of the season. Thankfully, it didn't. But yeah, I'd say around Silverstone, I started kind of shifting my focus to help Owen get the best positions possible.
Well, you absolutely succeeded. Congratulations to you both on the team's championship, of course, to Owen on the drivers' championship, and both of you for a successful race this evening. Thanks so much to both of you for coming to chat to us, and again, congratulations, Owen, on the title.
Thank you very much.
There you are, Owen McGorgy and Jake Denham from Race Clutch joining us there first of all, followed by Jone Simičić, who finishes third in the final race of 2024. Jone, this race was a tricky one, I'm sure, for you and many around you as well. Spent a lot of time looking at the back of other people in a long train. How would you describe that race overall?
Well, first of all, big congrats to Owen for solid job and for Race Clutch for perfectly executed strategy when they had P1, P2. They did the correct thing and made it easy for Owen. He was very consistent across the whole season either way, so really deserved from him to take the title away from me. So again, congrats to him. But this race, it's been frustrating. I think Jake overdid his Magnussen train a bit. We were so slow for some time, but I just could not make a move because we were in a train. I was not right behind him, and yeah, it was not easy.
Absolutely, and I'm sure it's not been an easy season for you overall as well. It's the first time you've been at a season since 2019 and not won the title, so it must be a bit of a disappointing one for you overall, but still 2 race wins involved within that and some good performances otherwise as well. How are you going to look back on 2024 in FSR?
Well, the main priority for me this year was streaming. So I still wanted to win the championship. I think I would be able to still fight it despite being occupied by the streaming as I'm trying to start that. But I think I have counted like 3 races during the season where I could or should have won, but got either like involved in an incident, like crashed off by some other car, or like in Silverstone when I was leading, and then I pressed the wrong button by mistake and blew up the engine. And also I think for Melbourne I was running for easy P3 and did a mistake, bumped Alex ahead when battling with Jake and so on. Like several races where I should have been P1 or on the podium and then therefore be able to fight for the championship. But well, things went wrong, so I'm only P5 I think now at the moment. So that's how it is. But overall it's been for sure a season of learning and also like learning how to let others win.
Absolutely. Well, I've got good news for you, by the way. You finished 4th, not 5th. So there you go. You gained a place.
Okay.
You gained a place. But
not bad.
I said early on, I'm not sure you really care. But anyway, you've gained a place. So well done. But thanks very much for coming to chat to us, Ewan, after another podium finish here in 2024. You're 4th for the season, of course. Thanks for being with us throughout 2024 in the World Championship. It's been great to have you again. And thanks for chatting to us.
Thank you guys for the broadcast.
Thanks very much. Ewan Simicic there, 3rd place tonight in the Japanese Grand Prix. Welcome. That does it for the racing. It was, as we say, our 2nd championship finale in just 3 seasons. Quite remarkable, really, that we've had that, and we're in a great era at the moment in the Formula SimRacing World Championship as far as close championship goes, but unfortunately the drama and the excitement of 2022 maybe not quite replicated in quite the same way here today.
Yeah, the Race Clash boys did the execution that they needed, and they were clinical today, and you can't take anything away from that. The amazing speed, both in qualifying and in the race. They had the strategy to back it up as well, so good job there. And you have to remember Jake Denhan as well, he overtook Biancalilla. That could have been the floodgates opening, but he didn't let that happen, so great job from those guys. And in the end, it was Owen winning the championship.
And I do this at the end of every FSR season, Cam. I put you on the spot, whether you've been commentating or not. And this time you have, so you're not quite so much on the spot, but I am still putting you on the spot somewhat. About future of FSR and what you've got to say sort of about the season as a whole from an administrative, what's the word for that? Administrative. Sorry, yeah, there we go. I'm good at English. Administrative side of things. How are things been in FSR, and what can you offer us about the future, if anything?
Oh, I mean, it's been tough because, just moving house, jobs, all that sort of stuff just before the season started. So very difficult indeed time-wise, but we got it done. We had a good season, and there is a good potential to have more racing before the end of the year, which is good. Beyond that, who knows? Get in contact with me if you want to get yourself involved in FSR 2025, because we certainly have long enough to plan that now, with the season finishing now in August. So, yes, it's not looking too bad. It, of course, just takes some more admins and people to get involved with the community, really.
All right, so thanks very much. We hope to see a little bit more racing before 2024 is over. But of course, the World Championship is complete. It's one of the earliest finishes to a Formula SimRacing World Championship we've ever had, but it's certainly delivered in terms of its excitement. Our 2nd championship finale in just 3 seasons, and only our 4th in the 24-season history of the Formula SimRacing World Championship. What it's offered us is our 14th ever champion, Owen McGorgy, ending the 7-year British drought by becoming a first-time world champion, the first-time world champion for a couple of years. It's been a wonderful season from start to finish. From myself, Ewan O'Leary, Cam Rodger alongside me, and every single other commentator and behind-the-scenes organisational person that has been part of the FSR season for 2024. A big thanks to all of you, and a big thanks to everyone who has tuned in to the action as well. We'll see you later on this year for a bit more racing, but predominantly in 2025 for the World Championship all over again. From all of us here at FSR, for now, it's goodbye.
Hello, I'm Jack Nichols, and welcome to
Who's going to break Eastman's world title?
For my Gosby! Oh, he's done it! And look at these two go! Itchy Hoy is going to do it! His first victory!
The World Championship is done.
What a race it's been!